Yeah, this is the story of Donald Trump's performance here, I think, in Virginia tonight. It's not really in this Northern Virginia area. You see Hillary Clinton, this is Loudon right now, about a 22,000 vote lead, pretty much on course with what Barack Obama got 4 years ago. I mean, the story for Donald Trump, it's these rural areas. It's these, small red counties that just, big turnout, giant Trump supporting them. And we can show you some down here. Look at this, 82% tiny rural county. But that's what you're looking at powering this thing.
Yeah, I don't want this word exurbs to become a thing. This is out in the country. Yeah, we have an expression for this, and this is the vote out in the country.
Southwestern Virginia is its own thing.
Where we've seen all the Trump signs for weeks and weeks and weeks and all summer long. So.
Nicole Wallace, you're the caffeinated canary.
No, listen, I feel like I was wrong. I mean, this is really a tight race, and the Clinton campaign projected a lot more confidence than has been reflected in the way the evening has gone down so far. And no matter what happens, Trump had a lot more support in a lot more states among a lot more people than the polls detected up to this morning.
I am told Lawrence O'Donnell has more from the insiders. Lawrence?
We're here with Steve Schmidt and James Carville. James, I've seen you worried from time to time. I've never seen you more worried about anything than you were worried about Virginia. How are you feeling now?
Well, I feel much better. The party chair that I've been in contact with, and she's watching with the governor, and it's moving better, because if we lost Virginia, we probably were going to lose. So I feel much better about Virginia. But, and what Chris said about Pennsylvania is encouraging. I think all eyes are going to be on North Carolina now.
Steve, North Carolina.
Yeah, for sure. And she's behind in North Carolina. Look, my prediction was 320 to 340 electoral votes for her. I'm clearly wrong on that. This is going to be a very long night. It's going to be close. And you look at the rural vote that's coming in Florida, I don't think these things happen in isolation. So as we move into Ohio, we move into Michigan, we're going to see this phenomenon play out. But the presidency is up for grabs, clearly.
That's what you keep saying in our ongoing conversation here that the audience hasn't been a part of, is that this doesn't happen in isolation.
Right.
Talk about Michigan. What can we expect in Michigan
if you have all this turnout in North Florida, if you have all this turnout in North Florida, if you have all this turnout in rural Virginia, if you have all this turnout, it's going to bleed over into Michigan. I mean, it's very hard for me to see a scenario. I hope I'm wrong. I desperately want to be wrong. I'm not in the business of being to be right here tonight, but it worries me about Michigan. We're getting to the point here. Yeah, several passed to 270, but we're getting to the point where some of them are getting cut off. I was, much more optimistic about Florida, obviously, but, still a very good chance that she'll be the next president. But, I would say to Democrats watching this, don't tune out yet.
Steve, a chance that she'll be the next president?
Yeah, for sure there's a chance she'll be the next president, but it's a lot closer than anybody expected, certainly in all our line of work.
Brian, we're going back to you for poll closings.
That quote from Steve Schmidt will find a life of its own tonight. The presidency is up for grabs. We just heard it there on live television. Both Mr. Carville and Mr. Schmidt exercising a whole lot of caution. The American people have a funny way of making sure they get heard, and they are being heard tonight. 10 o'clock hour is 5 seconds away. Here we go.
States here. This is
in
going to be
gold. There they are. Here are the closings this hour. It is 10 p.m. in the state of Iowa. Our call for right now is too close to call. In the state of Nevada, our call for this hour is too close to call. In the state of Utah, and remember, favorite son in the race, three-way, too early to call. Clinton, Trump, McMullen. In the state of Montana, the Big Sky State goes to Donald Trump. So that red band, that red wall continues its trek west with the time zones. Here's the electoral race, 140, 104. Here is the electoral. Here are the too close to call states: Florida of the battlegrounds, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Georgia, Michigan, all of these too close to call, North Carolina, 81% in. Virginia. We've talked a lot about Virginia this last
Look
hour.
how close.
Minnesota. 12% of the raw vote in. New Hampshire and Maine. Too early to call. Here we go, Arizona. 11 electoral votes. Missouri, Trump in the lead. Too early to call. Wisconsin. Colorado. And New Mexico. Let's pan down to the ice and bring up the map. Blue and red on Democracy Plaza. Here's your country so far. The states we've been able to call as the time zones head from east to west. You can see the big states we are waiting for.
Utah is such an interesting case study. Not even a case study. Utah is its own case, its own standalone politics and dynamics this year. If Evan McMullin is able to win the state of Utah tonight, and again, our call right now is that Utah is too early to call, and it is a three-way race between Trump, Clinton, and McMullin. If he wins Utah, that would be the first time a third-party candidate or an independent candidate gets electoral votes since George Wallace, right? 1968? I mean, if he can actually win that state, there's obviously Evan McMullin is not going to win the presidency, but if he wins that state in Utah, that'll be its own kind of history. But it is striking to see both Iowa and Nevada at this point as too close to call.
It could also throw the race into chaos if we come down to a place where neither of them can get to 270.
That's
his
right.
win, if he wins, his win in Utah could be what blocks either one of them from getting to
With those
270.
6 electoral votes, though, there's also 2 potentially faithless electors out of the state of Washington, which is expected to go for Clinton, but 2 Bernie-supporting electors in Washington have suggested that
I love
they
the
might be
phrase.
out of it. Faithless electors.
Steve Kornacki's at the board once again, and this time it's Michigan. Steve.
Starting to get returns from Michigan. Obviously, this is a state very late in the campaign. The Trump campaign said, we're going to put this on the map. The Clinton campaign started playing defense. What can we tell you? Pretty early here in the returns. Couple things to point out. First of all, we talk about this college, non-college white gap. I said there's 2 counties in Michigan that tell this story writ large for the entire country. Let me show you what's happening in both of them right now. First of all, this is Oakland County. This is the sort of quintessential college-educated white voter county. It is a big suburb. It is affluent, economically upscale. Most of the vote, maybe even all the vote, is now in. Hillary Clinton, you see, she's winning it. She's winning it by 8 points. This is basically the same margin Barack Obama got out of Oakland County.
Hey, Steve, I got to interrupt you. We have a call. This projection, New Mexico is going to Hillary Clinton. Remember the hubbub when Donald Trump showed up in New Mexico a few days before the election? Everyone said, what do they know? What do they know? Both parties, what do they know? Here's the electoral map, 140-109, with New Mexico now
5
with the
electoral
Democrats.
votes there, yeah.
That will give them a patch of blue to the west of Texas. So there's your map. Mr. Kornacki, please continue. Apologies.
No problem. I understand. So we are talking about Oakland County. This is the heart of the college-educated white voter. This is the big college-educated white voter county in Michigan. And you see, mostly in right now, Hillary Clinton's won it. Used to be a Republican county. Now Clinton wins by 8 points. But we said keep an eye right next door tonight on another giant county outside Detroit. That is Macomb County. Macomb County is where that term you hear in politics, Reagan Democrat, comes from. This place went for Reagan in the 80s. It swung back to the Democrats. Barack Obama won it. These are blue-collar white voters. Check out what's happening. It's early in Macomb County. Barack Obama won this county 4 years ago. Barack Obama won this county 8 years ago. Democrats said all those stories about us struggling in Macomb County, they're a thing of the past. Well, check this out. Donald Trump, it's early here. He's leading by 20. This matches what polling showed, though, in the run-up to this election might happen in Macomb County. This is a county that's going to churn out at least 400,000 votes tonight. Donald Trump, if this holds, this is a major shift within the state of Michigan. This is a big reason why his campaign decided to target this state. Now, if you're a Democrat, you still have some counties that are yet to come in. We can take a look at Wayne. This is where Detroit is. It's not just Detroit. You'll end up seeing about 800,000 votes come out of here. This will end up probably going Clinton's way in a big way. Also, right next door, this is where the University of Michigan is. College town, very liberal. A lot of votes still to come there. One quick thing we can point out, too. Where did Hillary Clinton go when she went into Michigan. She went right outside Grand Rapids. She delivered a speech that was all about her relationships, friendships, willingness to work with Republicans. She was trying to make inroads in Republican Michigan. This county 4 years ago, Mitt Romney got 68%. Clinton spoke there yesterday. You see, it may have made a tiny impact, but 63% for Trump there right now.
Steve Kornacki, can I just ask you one quick question, Steve?
Hang on, I got a projection. NBC News is projecting that when all the votes are counted, Donald Trump will be the winner in Missouri. 10 electoral votes, another piece in the Midwest, and another patch of red. The race to 270 looks like this: 150, 109. Let's look at Missouri on the map.
Thank you. Steve Kornacki, can I ask you one impressionistic question in terms of what you've been watching tonight? No, I can't.
Oh.
You there,
I'm here.
Steve?
Yes, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was hiding behind a pillar.
If you could repeat the question, I'm sorry.
Here's my question. As you have been watching these returns come in, as you have been tracking these county-by-county results, as we've been looking at these dozen states now that are too close to call, roughly, are you seeing anything where the polling seems like it was flat wrong, where the polling seems like it was radically off in terms of what we're seeing tonight on election night?
Yeah, I don't know radically. I mean, when you think about it, Florida, it looked like Clinton was leading steadily in the polls by 2-3 points. Probably if you averaged them together, it looked like she had a slight advantage there. We knew Florida 4 years ago was the closest state on the map. It was decided by less than a point. So when you're looking at how close it is right now, it's not a radical difference. It's not like there's a miss there by 10 points. But I think the accumulation of all those polls in Florida, for that matter, North Carolina, you started adding them up, and it just looked like Hillary Clinton had a small but steady lead in those states. So those are closer. I think Virginia, the fact that Virginia is as close as it is, I think that ends up being a surprise. There were a few polls late there that showed that thing might be closing. But I mean, I think there was an expectation, a pretty broad expectation among politics people 2 weeks ago that Virginia could even be a double-digit win. There was that idea that it was Tim Kaine's home state and that demographically, those college-educated white suburbanites in the northern Virginia suburbs, they were just coming to dominate even a little bit in the suburbs around Richmond. But again, there is that equally strong message that's being delivered tonight by white voters in sort of rural areas, exurbs. They are coming out in big numbers. You're taking, and you've been talking about this, they're taking counties we knew were red. They're making them redder tonight.
Steve Kornacki, thank you very much. Super helpful in terms of that context.
Chris Matthews.
Well, you look at Michigan historically, it shouldn't be such a shock that it might go for Trump because there is a history of very conservative white voting in Macomb County.
Oh, yeah.
George Wallace won the 1972 Democratic, as you know, Gene, won that primary out there. Democrats, which includes a lot of African-American voters. So even with that shift, I mean, that minority role, it is a conservative area. I think we make a mistake thinking the South's all south of here. A lot of it's mixed around. And I think that contiguous map we're looking at is, however, very powerful. I think we are increasingly a bicoastal, a country that sees itself as a bicoastal progressive part of the world, and a very, not necessarily isolationist, but very traditional center of the country, and conservative, and white, if you will, and especially the prairie states. Look at them up there, the plain states, the Dakotas, all those states, they just go Republican. A lot of this map, in all fairness, could have been filled in a couple of months ago. It's the interesting thing is the states that we're following tonight are the ones we've been wondering about for months.
Absolutely.
So we're pretty much where we were months ago in terms of knowing how this is going.
It's January.
What is interesting is it's very cloying. It's very teasing. It's not telling us the answer.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, all we're getting is what we knew when we went in. Now, the interesting race, of course, are the Senate races where you saw, as you pointed out before you got on tonight, the Indiana race. It's really a blowout for the
Todd Young beating
the knockout. A great name, by the way, for a newcomer, Todd Young, running against a well-known Evan Bayh, who was a long-time popular figure in that state. Elected, his father was a senator, he was governor, he was a senator. He could have stayed there forever had he stayed there.
Exactly, and they just decided he was past his sell-by date, right? He just wasn't.
You don't go away and come back home and say, I've been away. And I think that's a fact. I think we're interesting. But also tonight, we don't know who's going to run the Senate. As a friend of mine pointed out today, we have 3 branches of government at stake tonight. Later tonight, we'll know that. The presidency, the United States Senate,
and the Supreme
Court. All of them lie before the American people's tabulations tonight between now and hopefully when 2 in the morning, when we sort of begin to think it's time to take a nap at least.
So
I think it's to me, I love this because I love exciting close races. I hope there's clarity. I hope there is a concession speech by the loser. I hope the American people go to bed and say, at least we have an electoral system that works, that's clean, it's trustable, it's not rigged. And in the end, we had an exciting race, which, as surprising and as disturbing as it was, had a conclusion.
I think the idea that Michigan is not in reach for Republicans is one that people forget when you come down to the final stretch. Michigan is always in the game plan on a traditional campaign, and George W. Bush spent a lot of time campaigning in the Upper Peninsula.
Good reminder.
Which, you know, Michigan is always available to you in the beginning, and then depending on the contours of the race, depending on how you're doing in the battleground states, you simply have to make choices. It's like Pennsylvania and New Jersey for Republicans. You always put it on your wish list because of the nature of the people who live there. They do have a lot of traditional values in common with traditional Republican candidates. So this, again, is exactly what Donald Trump should have been doing if he'd had a traditional campaign all along. If he'd had a traditional campaign all along, he would have been there. Ken Mellman, who was George W. Bush campaign chairman, had a metric for touching these states and these kind of voters every 10 or 12 days. You know, so if he wins, he will have done it despite.
And how would you put Michigan and Wisconsin on that in terms? I mean, Wisconsin's another one.
I literally was on a bus tour through both. I mean, I ate custard, which they call ice cream in Wisconsin, and it's a long drive.
Another thing, a living memory of how great it was. In Pennsylvania, the steel cities of Western Pennsylvania, like McKeesport, places like that where the cities boomed, that every guy coming out of World War II had a job coming out of World War II. White guys, mainly, but a lot of jobs out there. In Detroit, Motor City,
it was a city of 2 million people, built for 2 million people.
It's a boom town. We made them cars for the world. We made steel for the world in Pennsylvania. We were the center of the universe in terms of manufacturing. These people all remember that, and they want it back.
And Trump talked about it from the beginning of his primary run.
Nirvana back to you.
Exactly. That's what he said. That's what he promised. How he could possibly deliver that, no one knows. But that was the promise. I do wonder, though, whether a more conventional Donald Trump running a more conventional campaign would have done as well as this Donald Trump running this campaign.
We'll never know.
I mean, we'll never know.
Anyway,
what's your answer?
I think not. Actually,
he would have lost in the primary.
He would have lost in the primary. He would have lost to Donald Trump, right? I mean, there was he hit a nerve at the right moment with this sort of unconventional is not the word for it, at times crazy approach to campaigning.
He could have reined it in after becoming the nominee, but I know we haven't from him, right?
Yeah.
Fine-tuning Donald Trump is a challenge.
Two pieces of business. We have a Senate call in North Carolina. Burr is our projected victor in the Senate race in North Carolina.
This was a tough
thought
race.
this would go later tonight. Richard Burr, the projected winner. And over to Steve Kornacki for some new math out of Florida.
Let's take a look at Florida. We've been saying, what's the gap Hillary Clinton has to overcome as these final votes come in? Well, it remains steady. Look where we stand right now. Hillary Clinton, about 136,000 votes. That's the window we've been in for a long time now. And frankly, she's running out of places on this map to find 136,000 votes. The big hope for Democrats has been the Gold Coast, the big 3 Democratic counties down here in the southeastern part of the state. I'll show you, though, there does not seem to be much vote left out in these places. Let me start with Broward. That is the biggie. About 755,000 votes were cast in Broward County 4 years ago. That was a high turnout election, 755. You see, they've blown past that number here. Doesn't mean they're all in. There are some left. There are not a lot left, I don't think. Also, Palm Beach County, 600,000 votes were cast here. You can see, again, they've blown past that. Miami-Dade County, it was 875. You can see they are well past that. There is big Democratic turnout in these places, and Hillary Clinton's getting the margins Barack Obama did, maybe even a little more. But there is enormous turnout in Republican areas of this state as well. There also might be a little vote left up here, Volusia County, think Daytona Beach. This was dead even 4 years ago. Mitt Romney won this thing by a hair. Donald Trump has turned this into a double-digit win, and also the turnout is much higher. Let me show you this. Overall, statewide turnout in Florida, if you add these numbers together, you're over 9 million. You're north of 9 million. You're probably sitting at about 9.2, 9.3 million if you add them all together. Keep that in mind as I show you what the results were 4 years ago. We thought this was high turnout. Look at this. You were sitting back, when you add all the third-party candidates together, about 8.5 million in Florida 4 years ago. So that is considerably higher turnout. Democratic organization, Democrat turnout, those big counties, a big story tonight. Republican turnout is too.
Maria Teresa Kumar is with us here in the studio, CEO of Voto Latino. Maria Teresa, I wanted to get your take on the Florida numbers Steve just walked us through.
Well, one of the things I would be looking at right now is how many of those Republicans basically split their ticket. We know that roughly about 100,000 of them split their ticket for Hillary Clinton, but then went down ballot for Marco Rubio, securing his win. So of those individuals that are left over, I'm curious to see how many people, and I would look specifically be speaking about Republican women that decide to vote for Hillary, but then went down ballot.
All right, Maria Teresa Kumar, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will update all of the pending races, including the one you see there. North Carolina with 83% of the vote in, too close to call, followed by Michigan, and the list we have almost committed to memory by now.
When everything is designed around you, the driver, you can. The new Mazda 3.
Sorry, kids. Feeling dead on your feet?
I've been on my feet all day.
Dr. Scholl's massaging gel insoles have a unique gel wave design for outrageous comfort that helps you feel more energized. Dr. Scholl's, feel the energy.
Hot dog. Seen it, covered it. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum. PenFed's got great rates for Madison and great rates for Washington. PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
At PenFed Credit, we've got great mortgage rates for homeowners all across America. Get the great rate you deserve, wherever you are. Wherever you are.
Great rates for Buzzards Bay and great rates for San Jose. PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
Apply today at PenFed.org.
This fall, the most popular magazine in the world is bringing the most compelling crime stories to life on Investigation Discovery.
I just want to talk to my sister. I can't even do that.
A 10-month-old girl was reported missing.
My heart sank, and I just knew.
These are the stories that changed everything.
The entire world was heartbroken.
We bring viewers closer to these stories than anybody else can.
People Magazine investigates. All new, Mondays at 10. Only on Investigation Discovery.
Let's talk about early voting. Does that tell you something about energy and attitude?
If you were watching tonight, you could have known he went home for a little while because he used the word attitude on the air, on television. He talked about
Brian,
someone's
you know so well. Brian.
We are back. We have a major call coming out of the vote. We'll try to get it up there, and it is Ohio. Donald Trump, the projected winner in the state of Ohio. 18 electoral votes, a hugely important piece of real estate where that comparison is concerned. 168, 109 in the race to 270. Here's where it looks like, this is where it looks like as a color, filling in the red alongside Indiana to the west of Pennsylvania, down on through West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and so on.
Ohio and Iowa had been the two traditional swing states that the Clinton campaign felt like were, or the Trump campaign felt like were most within their grasp. Iowa and Ohio consistently have been polling in ways that have been favorable to Donald Trump. Obviously, Ohio is the archetypal battleground, but I think everybody's been feeling like it was leaning toward him. Still, that's got to shake the Clinton confidence even more than these other close races do right now. I do want to point out one thing about North Carolina, which we are watching so intently right now. Again, North Carolina is one of these states that is too close to call, and it has been so for a very long time. Even right now, with 83% of the vote in, it is still too close to call Trump in the lead. But we were talking a little bit earlier on about the other two big ticket races in North Carolina. One of them, this Senate race, Richard Burr, incumbent Republican senator, trying to hold on to his seat against Deborah Ross, who ran a good campaign against him. Burr is now the projected winner of that seat. He will hold on to that seat. The other big ticket item in North Carolina is the governor's race. And it's been fascinating to watch these governor's numbers come in out of this governor's race in North Carolina. Right now, again, with 84% of the vote up, it is too early to call. Too early to call in North Carolina, but you see these guys deadlocked 49-49. So if you're looking for sort of advice as to how North Carolina is going to go in the presidential, that Senate race may make you think that Donald Trump is going to pull it out. This governor's race gives us no information because this is as close as they come.
Yeah, historically, you have to win Ohio if you're a Republican. It's a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. Winning Ohio does put him at the edge now, possibly winning the election. However, I do think we're going to see a pattern which is traditional. The Republican, if you look at the country, is basically divided 50-50. Winning Ohio, then losing Pennsylvania makes sense tonight. We'll see if it does end up making sense.
One thing I will say about this Ohio call is that this is something that the Clinton campaign was prepared for. So when they were setting out their map that said, OK, we have all these more paths than the Trump campaign, it included losing Ohio and losing Iowa. Yeah. So I think from that perspective, this news should be tempered just a little bit. I think the question is still their path. Don't forget, we haven't even started talking about Colorado. And there were some late questions in this race about Colorado and what the movements there were going to be. Their path is Virginia, Colorado, and it's through the South.
All right. Speaking of Colorado, let's do some of these Senate races, because the first one on our list, we've been trying to fall back and catch up with these Senate races this evening, is Michael Bennet returning from Colorado. There will be
Democratic incumbent there.
Inevitable talk about Michael Bennet joining leadership, I think, in the years to come. A very popular figure. And more about Colorado as a state after this. The leader of the Democrats predicted, people guess, it's going to be led by Chuck Schumer of New York, who had an easy time returning to the Senate. We're just going to go through these. Jerry Moran in Kansas. John Hoeven, North Dakota. Getting these as you're seeing them. John Thune going back to the Senate from South Dakota. He had an interesting history with Donald Trump during this campaign. John Boozman, Arkansas. Georgia, it's going to be Johnny Isaacson. In Iowa, the longtime KG Republican veteran Chuck Grassley going back. And Mike Lee, the popular Republican, is going back from Utah. Here's the Senate again. Democrats with one net gain, but this is early.
Yeah, but the Senate races that are outstanding right now are a bunch of fascinating ones. In Missouri, I believe our characterization in Missouri with Roy Blunt trying to return to the Senate, the Republican, against a Democratic challenger named Jason Kander. I believe our characterization there is that is still too early to call.
I thought that was too early, yeah.
In Missouri, we do have a presidential call that Missouri has gone to Donald Trump at the presidential level, but this Senate race right now still too early to call. Also, in terms of too close to call Senate races, big names. Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania against Katie McGinty, the Democrat. That's too close to call. In New Hampshire, the Kelly Ayotte race against the Democratic governor, Maggie Hassan. That is too close to call. And in Nevada, we've got Joe Heck, the Republican, up against Catherine Cortez Masto, who's the Democrat trying to take Harry Reid's seat there.
We have
too close.
Excuse me. We have a major projection. In the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, the projected winner is Hillary Clinton.
Hillary
Casey
Clinton's campaign breathing a sigh of relief there.
Sure, sigh of relief. And, you know, we were talking earlier, and I had a source talking to me about, and forgive me for using a House race as an example here, but Barbara Comstock, she's a representative from Northern Virginia, Fairfax area. I'm told her internal polling had her tied. And at the end of the day, she won, or she looks like she's on track to win by almost 10 points with 90% of the vote in.
Really?
So we have been talking about what may have gone wrong here. And even if Hillary Clinton comes out on top here, it's very clear there was something going on in this polling. I think that's a pretty sharp example in an area that should have gone over.
I was just checking that race you're talking about. It's Virginia 10, Barbara Comstock, seen as a bellwether race.
Yes.
She is the projected winner in that race right now. It looks like the margin is 8 points in her favor. Luann Bennett was the Democrat there. Everybody thought that was going to be a squeaker. It's not.
You know, the Washington Post endorsed Comstock. I think you bear a bit of the responsibility for this.
But it seems obvious from what's happening nationwide that newspaper endorsements are not the most
powerful. Guy's a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist.
Exactly.
He doesn't speak for the gray lady of Washington,
but newspaper look at all the newspapers that endorse Donald Trump, right?
But, you know, in terms of these bellwether races, we're still waiting for a result on Florida. Florida is obviously going to be huge. One of the Republican incumbents in the House who was thought to be endangered in this year of Donald Trump, who definitely distanced himself from Donald Trump, was Carlos Curbelo, the Republican Cuban-American representative in Florida District 26. Carlos Curbelo has also won his seat tonight. He will also be returning to Congress. And so we're looking for these signs in terms of these too close to call races, and we're seeing them mix up a little bit.
My two-word nomination for what went wrong with prediction as to actually is yard signs. No one counted the yard signs. And I think if you see those matching glasses and mustaches, that means that's a pollster if you see them out in public. Steve Kornacki with the route to 270, which really becomes the story. There are two specific routes, two specific campaigns at this hour.
Well, the question everybody's asking, I think, seeing the results come in, can Donald Trump win the presidency tonight? Let me take you through what it would take. We said a narrow path coming into tonight. Some things are going his way. We just showed you Ohio. Now, Hillary Clinton was just called the winner in Virginia. We can add that to her column. By the way, what you're seeing here, some of these states that are lighter colors, they haven't actually been called yet. For the purposes of this exercise, we're going to expect Trump to win in Idaho. We're going to expect Clinton to win California, Oregon, Washington. Keeping that in mind, what at this point would it take for Donald Trump to get to 270? Count up with me here. Start in New Hampshire. We got a too close to call race there. Let's say Donald Trump wins New Hampshire. Take a look in Maine. Now, you got the statewide, you got the first congressional district. The first congressional district's Portland, kind of Democratic. Let's say Donald Trump wins a district in Maine. In Maine, you get an electoral vote for a district. This is very rural. He's got a shot there. Take a look at Pennsylvania. Let's say Hillary Clinton holds Pennsylvania. Do we have something here? Red, excuse me, should be red. Let's say Hillary Clinton, see, I'm doing this on the fly here. Let's say Hillary Clinton gets Pennsylvania. Let's say Trump gets North Carolina. We see him leading down there right now. Yeah. Let's say Trump holds on in Georgia. Let's say Trump gets Florida, where he's leading right now. Look where he's starting to get to. Now, let's say Hillary Clinton holds the upper Midwest here. Let's say she gets Wisconsin. Let's say she gets Minnesota. Trump in Iowa. Let's say he gets Iowa. We'll give her right now Michigan. I know that's a very close state. Give that to her. Let's say Donald Trump gets the one district in Nebraska. Let's give Hillary Clinton Colorado. That's been looking Democratic. Let's say Trump gets Arizona, and look where he is, 268. And at that point, if he were to get Nevada, he'd be over 270. If he were to lose Nevada, because there were some bad early signs for him there, if he could win Michigan, 284, and winning Michigan at 284, he could even absorb a loss perhaps, like if he were to somehow lose Arizona, still over 270 at that point. So this is the first time we can say it's very theoretical at this point. Things have gone Trump's way. He needs some of these states to actually be called for him, but there are paths to 270 that are opening up for Donald Trump as we speak.
Who else wants to talk to John Ralston?
Oh, yeah, I know. Our buddy John Ralston, who's the dean of the Nevada Political
He said it was over.
He said it was over based on the early vote. He said if you compare the early vote now to the early vote then.
He was definitive.
He was definitive.
Well, what we've got right now, I mean, obviously, North Carolina continues to be fascinating. Florida continues to be fascinating. But we still don't have calls in Georgia, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania. We still have a call in Maine. So there's a lot of these states that we thought for sure we would at least know by now, and we don't. Right now, that Michigan number that Steve Kornacki was talking about, that's so important. We've got less than a third of the vote in Michigan thus far, and that race considered too close to call. Donald Trump leading there, but less than a third of the vote in.
Lawrence O'Donnell, I have a question for James Carville. Does he agree with me? Michigan ought to be renamed Michigan, Michigan, Michigan?
How did you know what we were talking about?
I didn't know.
We just spent a minute here on Michigan, and I think we might have an agreement on the table about just how important Michigan is. James Carville.
Look, if the Democrats lose Michigan, looking at Steve's map, I think this puppy's over. I mean, you stand by, because Michigan is going to be really critical. I mean, it was good we held Virginia, but we were supposed to hold Virginia. I mean, that was just sort of necessary. I hope Chris is right about Pennsylvania. North Carolina looks less than encouraging. Florida looks less than encouraging. I mean, the thing will come down to Michigan.
Steve, Michigan.
Michigan's going to decide who the president of the United States is tonight.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
You've seen the map. Let's go back to where we began tonight. Florida. What do you see? Where do you think we are right now?
It's very ominous for Hillary Clinton. I don't think she's going to be able to make up the ground in Florida. It doesn't seem to me that there's enough outstanding vote share for her to be able to come back. But I think what we've seen is a surge of rural Republican red vote, and you see that early call in Ohio, though the Clinton campaign was expecting it, that portends ominously for Michigan. Culturally, there's an alignment of these voters, and you're seeing them perform, I think, at a consistent level across all of these states, which is vastly exceeding expectations. And it's something that Nicole was saying earlier. Donald Trump doesn't have a traditional ground game. And this is an organic surge of support that just wasn't seen, wasn't anticipated across the board in the predictive analysis and the models and in the polling.
Yeah. James, you've been on the phone to Florida. You're writing off Florida at this point for Clinton?
I think it's very difficult. I'll be honest. It doesn't do any good to kind of spin it. It's closed. Looking at the map and looking what's out, I just don't see that many votes in Broward now. I think they'll get close to 950,000 people voting. They're going to blow way past the margins there, but he's still getting a third. I mean, for every 100,000, he gets your margins only. You win 66, he wins 33. I mean, the margin's only 30. It seems to me to be very difficult. I would love to be wrong. I would love to crow later tonight and say that she did carry Florida. I'm with Steve. The quickness of the Ohio call was disturbing. Not so much that we lost Ohio. That was always a real possibility, but that it came so quick.
The first brink you felt yourself on tonight was Virginia. That was the first one where you said, if Hillary Clinton doesn't win Virginia, it's lost. Now we've moved to Michigan. Michigan's the next stop on the must-win.
We thought going into the night, it was that he had break. He had to do this. He had to do that. It is now the Democrats have to. They don't have the margin. The path here is getting to be very narrow. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm just saying as the night goes on, the path narrows, and it's narrowed through on Steve's map. It's pretty clear that Michigan is absolutely critical.
Steve, who do you see with the favored map at this point?
I think you have to, well, look, I think it's a 50-50 proposition, other than to say this, that Donald Trump had to drop a bunch of these states tonight, had to win. In every state that he's had to win, he's dropped, right? He's dropped it into his column tonight. So he had a tight, narrow path. He had to pull an inside straight. He's on his way to pulling it. Now, so we'll see in Michigan, but you look at these numbers in Michigan and you look at the cultural similarities, between Michigan and Ohio. I think at this hour, you certainly can't say that, she has an easy ride in the state of Michigan.
Brian, tonight, it's Michigan, Michigan, Michigan at this table.
Lawrence and our specialists, our insiders, thank you. We have another projection. Just as we were going to sneak away to a break, we have another projection, and that is that in the state of Colorado, when all the votes are counted, Hillary Clinton will pick up 9 electoral votes there. As we look at the race to 270, here's the bar chart, 168 to 131. Let's see what this looks like in blue and red. It certainly starts a vertical for the Democrats out west. They have a known vertical in California along the Pacific Ocean. But Chris Matthews, listening to those, our colleagues in the other studio, interesting.
Look, there's no other word for it, that this is a surprise. And that, you know, I've been looking at these maps going back to whenever they started making them, and it's beginning to look like a familiar map. It's beginning to look like a map we've gotten used to. And Colorado is more liberal than most of the West, and New Mexico is more Hispanic. And we're going to see that logic continue. I think the patterns that we're looking at, how Northern Virginia, though, is holding strong for Hillary Clinton. And not as strong as they thought, but it's going to be there. The suburbs of Philadelphia have let to be heard. I think Pennsylvania is strongly going to go for Hillary Clinton. And the fascinating thing is that Michigan, which was picked up on the radar screen of the Trump people about 2 weeks ago, for people that don't seem to have all the mechanisms and apparatus of politics, they had good ears.
And an airplane.
Yeah, and they picked up when I said, you know, we better get out there and spend some time out there as an option to Pennsylvania, because they talked Pennsylvania for months, and they said, well, wait a minute, we can't do that. So now we're going to go up this other route. I mean, it's almost like the Civil War, General Lee looking for the place to go up, Yeah. And unfortunately, it's a lot like the Civil War, and we're going to take the next president to be a unifier, whoever it is. But I think that the fact that Utah, Nicole mentioned, that Evan McMullen could screw the whole thing up by 2 or 3 in the morning with this Zion vote, going back to Utah as an LDS guy and appealing to what we used to call our favorite son sort of election out there, could screw the thing up, because we do like to believe in this rickety system of ours actually working and it actually producing a president with 270 electoral votes. We haven't had this problem since back when those untied electors were elected back in the 60s, where we actually said, what are they going to do? I do think this is... punditry only goes so far, and it's based on history. Gene?
Yeah.
It's based on history.
No, I mean,
we don't have a history of tonight.
No, we don't. And so
there's nothing in the logbook.
And
we should have known that based on the primary.
But, not just punditry, but the numbers. I mean, the polling seemed to indicate something something different from what we're seeing tonight.
So we're not all that far off the polls at this point. There hasn't been a shocker. The overall race being this close is shocking, I think, to a lot of people. But in terms of, Trump winning Ohio is not crazy. Hillary Clinton winning Virginia is not crazy. We still don't know about North Carolina and Florida.
We don't.
We haven't seen a race end up in a place that's radically different than the polls said it would end up.
But James is right. At the margin, we thought Virginia would have been early in the evening, and the fact that actually, on the other hand, we did thought Georgia would be earlier in the evening. That's another fact.
Case, can you make your point again?
I just think that we should have seen this coming, because the primary was we were so surprised. No one thought that Donald Trump was ever going to get this far. Katie Tur has been saying this over and over and over again, as long as, she's been covering him. I have to say that when I was out with Hillary Clinton on the last week of the campaign, not this past weekend. This past weekend was a little bit different, but we were going from smallish staged event to smallish staged event, and at the time I thought this does not feel like covering a winning campaign in the final week. And I took some criticism for that from some sources, and this weekend felt like a winning campaign. The president, you all saw the rally on Independence Mall, but day to day you drive to these events, you drive past fields of Donald Trump signs. It's anecdotal, but it's there.
And anecdotally speaking, in terms of that Philadelphia event, one of the things that I noticed covering that live last night was, although that was an incredibly intense event in terms of the visuals and 33,000 people out in front of Independence Hall and Michelle Obama and Barack Obama and all, when Hillary Clinton gave her remarks, she was serious. She was almost tense. She did not at all seem psyched to be looking out at that huge numbers of people. There was no lightness to her, like relief, like, oh, this is over and I've got it. You could see it. I'm not a body language person in terms of dealing with candidates, but I was so different than what I expected to see from her, given the stagecraft of that evening. And in fact, actually the enthusiasm and excitement of the president himself to then see Hillary Clinton follow him and be workaday, serious, and almost terse.
Well, depending on how this ends up, though, I think the Clinton campaign could end up very, very happy that they decided to do that event in Philadelphia, right? Because it seems like it may shore up Pennsylvania, which they may need.
I'm walking into 30 Rock tonight, and a guy, I'll describe him, short and fat, yelled at me, jackass, and I yelled back something appropriate to him, okay, which I do.
Friend of yours?
A real pal. I know what, he was ginned up by the Clinton, the Obama thing. the Trump
thing. Yeah.
And it's been going on now, this anti-media. Could it be that when people are polled by pollsters, they see as the media,
this has been proffered,
they don't give an answer that's straight. They just don't even give an answer. They hang up on the person. They think they're part of that world. And this anti-media campaign of Trump's has been vicious, continual, and the heart of every rally. Well, you know, you're there. Every rally, it's been like that against Katie Turr, who she's there.
At more Clinton rallies, than Trump rallies.
It's part of its mood.
Just very quickly to your point, I do think Clinton is very much a workmanlike candidate. That's, you know, she, and watching her follow the president is very striking for that reason. I do think that they were flying around this weekend convinced that they were going to win. They were celebrating in the air on that airplane.
I concur. That was their body language. A couple of things here. We're going to run to a quick break, but I wanted to show you this graphic. 56% of the national vote is in. That's the difference between them. And also down on Rachel's side, the blue graphic down there that doesn't look like the election graphics, that's real. That's the Dow Jones futures. We have watched it fall through the 300, 400 level. It topped 700. It's back in the sixes. That's real. We'll keep an eye on that. Another break for us. We're waiting for over 10 states to close that we are desperately interested in. Clinton headquarters on the left. That's the Javits Convention Center, a sprawling structure along the Hudson River on the right. The much more modest space, the ballroom inside the venerable New York Hilton on 6th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, a building visible from our building here, and surrounded, as are all the secure locations tonight in New York, with New York City Sanitation Department dump trucks filled with sand. They have decided to use those as an impenetrable barrier. Trump Tower tonight is surrounded by dump trucks. It's quite a sight.
I will also say shout out to NYPD tonight for the number of officers that they've got out dealing with. I mean, the last time that we had 2 election night parties for the 2 major candidates in New York City was 1944. That's what they've got to deal with tonight in a race that has already featured a lot of misbehavior by fans on both sides. And the shout out to the NYPD in terms of how much overtime they're working tonight and what they've got their hands on. It's unprecedented.
Put it this way, the next president of the United States is in New York City tonight. In Michigan tonight, they have a barn burner. Kevin Tibbles is live in Grand Rapids. Hey, Kevin, what do you have there?
I guess you could describe it as a barn burner. I'm actually in a pizza joint in Grand Rapids, which of course is Gerald Ford country. But I mean, are you surprised what is going on?
I am, and I love it.
Why?
Because Michigan is in play, and we are taking back our country.
Well, I'm going to come back to you here, but that is because about 45 minutes to an hour ago, people were sitting around enjoying the evening, Brian. But all of a sudden, especially, you know, when they started to see the numbers come in from Ohio, for example, and then the numbers started to come in here, I've got to tell you, in Grand Rapids, they've only got about 20% of the votes counted, but it is leaning in that direction. And now I'm going to come back to what does that mean, take our country back?
It means ending corruption. It means loving our country. It means bringing back freedom and liberty to America and bringing back all the things that we believe in our country.
Is there some kind of as you can tell, Brian, I mean, it's a loud, raucous place. Is there some kind of a message that you're supposed to be trying to be sending to some establishment out there?
No, it's just being fiscally responsible. It's taking care of America. It's ending corruption. It's draining the swamp.
And as a woman, I have to ask this question. You voted for Donald Trump.
Yes.
Why?
Because Donald Trump is going to change America and bring back integrity country and bring back America to what we need to be, where we need to be.
What we have seen is some sort of a change seems to be taking place in Michigan tonight. And Brian, I'm sure I'll be talking to you as soon as that change, however way it goes, happens. I'll send it back to you, Brian.
In the meantime, you're in the right place. Stay surrounded by people, pizza, and the beverage of your choice. Kevin Tibbles in Jerry Ford's home congressional district.
And everybody, I mean, we heard James Carville and Steve Schmidt agreeing earlier this hour. Our insiders, our professionals agreeing that Michigan's going to decide the presidency tonight. Right now, just to check in, with 45% of the vote in Michigan, it's real tight, 48-47, a tiny lead for Donald Trump with just under half of the vote in. We're also keeping a very, very, very close eye on Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania has a little bit less than 2/3 of the vote in. We've got 65% of the vote in Pennsylvania right now. Hillary Clinton does have a lead right now in Pennsylvania. We also want to look at the other race that's outstanding right now in Pennsylvania, which is the Senate race in Pennsylvania. This has been a really interesting one to watch thus far. Pat Toomey's the Republican incumbent. He's been very cagey about his support for Donald Trump, or lack thereof. He waited until just over an hour before polls closed in Pennsylvania before he voted, so he would have to admit publicly that he did in fact vote for Trump. But right now, it's too close to call in Pennsylvania. You see that small lead there on behalf of the Democratic challenger to incumbent Senator Pat Toomey. Katie McGinty was chief of staff to the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Wolf. She right now is leading Pat Toomey, apparently, with 64% of the vote in, but this is too close to call. Steve Kornacki is keeping a very close eye on Pennsylvania in terms of where we've got the vote in and what's still to come. Steve?
Yeah, you see the situation right now. Clinton is leading in Pennsylvania. The votes that have been counted, the gap Donald Trump is trying to make up here in the state at this moment is 116,000 votes. Now, is it possible for him to get that? Let's take a look at the big places that are in and what's left for the Democrats. They have squeezed pretty much what they are going to squeeze out of Philadelphia. Still more vote, a little bit more vote to come in. Remember, they had the big rally there. Now, the target number here, the dream number, I should say, for Democrats here would have been something approaching 490 to 500,000 in terms of the margin. That's what Obama got. He got 492. You see right now Clinton's lead is sitting there closer to 400,000. They still feel they can win the state at 400,000, but it gets dicier at that point. Here's something that's a bit of a surprise. The suburbs of Philadelphia. We talked so much about college-educated white voters, suburbs of Philadelphia. This is going to be big for Hillary Clinton this year. Well, she's leading in them. You can see it's all blue around here, but let me take you through it. Look at the margin in Bucks, 49-47. That's pretty much unchanged from what we saw 4 years ago. That's not a huge shift to Hillary Clinton. There's a slight shift in Montgomery County. I think this was closer to about 17 points 4 years ago. You can see in Chester, this one was a little closer 4 years ago. There's been movement here. But again, this is not overall. This is about what Delaware came in at. This is not overall that dramatic a shift. Also, Pittsburgh basically in right now. The reason Donald Trump would still have some life in Pennsylvania, looking at the votes to come in, you see a lot of places that are red. York County running up the score here. You got vote there. You've got vote that's still going to come in Butler County. So there are some red areas left out here. Clinton leading.
All right, Steve Kornacki, did you have a...
Clinton's leading. I look at those county results. I mean, they're still talking about getting 450 out of Philadelphia, not 400,000. But, you know, that's a hell of a majority. And Jack Kennedy carried that city by 330, Humphrey by 450. There's a tradition of that kind of plurality coming out of the city. But it's been, as Steve points out, the huge difference is the suburbs used to be moderate Republican. They were New York Herald Tribune Republicans, Rockefeller Republicans. They don't exist anymore.
Nor does the New York Herald Tribune.
Right, the Herald Tribune. Yeah. The whole idea of a moderate Republican from the Northeast, like Bill Scranton, Nelson Rockefeller, Christine Todd Whitman, you know, from Jersey. There was this long pattern of well-to-do, in many cases, Republican moderates in that part of the country, and they're gone. Well, and that's why the burbs are
going. Lowell Weicker, Mac Mathias, keep
exactly
going.
Exactly those people.
Another break. Our last break before the top of the hour, 11 o'clock poll closings. If anything happens, we'll break out.
Under 4 minutes to the next poll closings at 11 o'clock Eastern at the top of the hour. Just a few minutes from now, we're going to have poll closings in California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Hawaii. At this point, this is the point of the race where everybody who looks back on having covered previous presidential races says, oh, yeah, by the time we called Hawaii, It's not like we didn't know what was going to be happening. We have no idea what's going to be happening. Right now, at this point, of all of the swing states that you could possibly be watching, anybody who had a list of swing states right now, the only ones that are decided are Virginia for Hillary Clinton, Colorado for Hillary Clinton, New Mexico for Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump winning Ohio. Those are the projections in terms of NBC News. But in terms of outstanding states, we are still waiting for results on Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Nevada. Chris, you've been sort of doing your own reporting on the Pennsylvania prospects.
I just talked to the chairman of the Democratic City Committee. He is basically, to use the old term, boss of the city. And they're still expecting to get between 420 and 440,000. Maybe up to 450. So they're still meeting their quota, which has always been enough to carry the state. Where there has been a flattening out of expectations has been the suburbs. They've certainly, the fact that Hillary Clinton has carried all 4 suburban counties is history. But the fact that she's done it not so well is the surprise and the question mark for the state. My surmise is they're still going to carry the state, but not dramatically.
We're also looking at Michigan. Michigan appears to be very, very tight right now. We've got a little bit less than half of the vote in. Trump appears to be in the lead, 49-46. But again, that's with less than half of the vote in. Steve Kornacki, do you have any intel for us on Michigan right now?
Yeah, we could take you through where the vote still has to come in. The margin here for Donald Trump sitting, about 57,000 votes. That's what Hillary Clinton's got to make up. Obviously, the best thing for Democrats here, if you're looking for good news, if you're a Democrat and you're looking in Wayne County, this is where Detroit is. This is a place that cast something on the order of 800-some-odd thousand votes 4 years ago. So you can see there is a lot of vote to come in Wayne. The other thing I can tell you is early on we had numbers here that showed a much closer race. It seems like the suburban parts of Wayne County reported first. So the city of Detroit now may be the heart of what's to come in. So Hillary Clinton, you can expect she's going to get a lot of votes out of Wayne. Also next door, still votes to come in. This is where Ann Arbor, University of Michigan is. If you're Donald Trump, though, check this out. We talked about it earlier. Macomb County produced a total of 400,000 votes 4 years ago. You can see a lot of vote to come in Macomb. This is a big reversal. This was a Democratic county in 2008, a Democratic county in 2012. This is looking like a Trump county by double digits tonight. So that is a shift in favor of the in favor of the Republicans. Here's another one we might be looking at. We talk about these characteristics of Michigan. Saginaw was Obama country 4 years ago. Trump leading there right now. So we're seeing the map change a little bit in Michigan.
Steve Kornacki looking tight at Michigan right now, as everybody is right now. There's a lot of states that are still outstanding, but we're starting to key in on which of the ones are essentially forks in the road for these little paths that either of the candidates might have. At this point, each of the candidates has a path that's more like a deer track through light brush. Neither of them has a yellow brick road that you can see from space, right? These are pretty narrow paths that each of them are going to be following, and that's why individual states like Michigan may end up being the thing that everybody in the country is watching today.
And channeling our old friend Tim Russert, who we always miss, especially on nights like this, we have all vowed to rename Michigan temporarily just by saying it 3 times. Michigan, 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 given its importance tonight. Here are our 11 p.m. poll closings. There they are in gold. We've gone all the way out west, and here we go up the side of the building. In the Golden State, in California, the projected winner is Hillary Clinton. Note the electoral votes, 55. In the state of Washington, Hillary Clinton, the projected winner. In the state of Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, Hillary Clinton, the projected winner. In the state of Hawaii, 4 electoral votes, Hillary Clinton, the projected winner. In Idaho, interesting race, as we've been saying, Donald Trump, the predicted winner, 4 electoral votes. Here is the bar graph to 270. Here is the math. Right now, Hillary Clinton 209 to Donald Trump's 172. More on that as we continue. Here are the states we continue to watch. Too close to call, and these are some big ticket items. Florida, Pennsylvania, Georgia, one of the first states to close tonight. Here we still are. Michigan, Michigan, Michigan. North Carolina, 15 electoral votes. Minnesota with 10. Iowa, still too close to call. Nevada, still too close to call. Ditto New Hampshire. and the state of Maine, which we have moved from too early to too close, with not even half the raw vote in. Now, the list of states we are characterizing too early to call: Arizona, Wisconsin, and Utah. Let's take a look at the Reds and the Blues down on home ice. In this road to 270, unmistakable color patterns, but a West Coast bulwark with this 11 p.m. Eastern time poll closing for Hillary Clinton.
It's interesting. At this poll closing, this is the first one where we've had all of the races called. We had no too close, no too early in the races that just closed right now at 11 o'clock. Also, no surprises. Had any of these been a surprise, it would have been seismic. But yes, Idaho is going to be red. The whole West Coast is going to be blue, including the island state of Hawaii. We only have one state left to close now, which is Alaska. That's the only state outstanding in terms of its poll closing. We're just waiting on states that are too early and too close to call.
Let's go to a Senate call on the wall here in the studio, and that's Ron Johnson
a big one.
Going back for the Republicans. The Democrats were quite confident that Mr. Feingold would be going back to the U.S. Senate. And, Chris, what's the quote you've been using all night? But you can't go home again.
You can't go home again. I think Feingold would have been a big surprise. I think historically he would have been the first person to defeat the person who beat him when he had the office.
He would have been. That's right.
But I have to tell you, as most of us have been tracking this potential for the Democrats to win back the Senate, we began it with Illinois, which they've won. They've beaten Kirk out there. Duckworth won. And this was the second easiest. Everyone said this is the second easiest. And the third easiest was going to be Indiana. That was going to be an easy
Maybe
pick.
Pennsylvania.
Well, then, of course, we got the 2 or 3 outstanding now. So it's very much up in the air. Now they needed 4, net 4 pickup to win, and the Democrats did. And yet, the thing about that, I do have values besides my horse race interest in this. I do know certain senators who are solid enough to stay there in normal circumstances. Kelly Ayotte, much more hawkish for my taste, but a solid senator, an impressive senator. If she holds on, that shows she's got the stuff in this kind of win condition up there. But I think clearly this thing's up in the air now. They have to, they didn't knock off Burr. Russ didn't win. But they didn't knock off, they didn't pick up the vote in Indiana. They didn't pick it up now in Wisconsin. They picked it up in Illinois, but they're just beginning this climb, and there are not many options left. I think they now have to win the other ones we're talking about, New Hampshire and Pennsylvania.
And Missouri's also still out there. It's too early to call at this point. Yeah.
That's going to be one interesting race between the old pro, as you said earlier, he's been around forever, and a guy who has all these Washington connections, a real leadership type, and up against this guy, Kander, who knows how to lock and load a gun with his blindfold on.
Military intelligence officer.
More fascinating ads of this cycle.
But you see there, I mean, it's too early to call, less than 40% in, but Blunt has a pretty big lead in terms of the vote that's in already. New Hampshire and Kelly Ayotte's race, that's very close.
We have a projection. Donald Trump is being awarded North Carolina.
Whoa. Well, that's a pick.
Just came in 15 electoral votes. This makes all kinds of different paths even more interesting. There's the electoral race, 209, 187. Here it is in color.
We're going to have to start talking about the deer tracks again, the paths to 270 at this point.
It's still contiguous.
Yeah.
It's all red together.
Well, if you're going to hike it, that's useful. But in terms of who's going to be president, I want to know the numbers.
Together.
Hey, Lawrence O'Donnell, I want to hear from James Carville.
We've got James Carville and Mike Murphy here. And, James, you were already discounting North Carolina for the Clinton campaign.
Right. You're not going to win Virginia narrowly and carry North Carolina.
And as we were watching this last group of returns, it was actually one of the Senate races that got your attention more than these presidential returns right
Wisconsin,
now. And that's Wisconsin.
Right.
What did you see?
We called Ron Johnson easy early in Wisconsin, which tells me that the path for Hillary Clinton and the Democrats in Wisconsin is going to be pretty narrow. The math in Michigan, Mike and I were just doing some sort of back of the envelope calculations. I can see a way that she can win Michigan, but look, every domino has to fall now.
Yeah, Michigan's super close, but there's a lot of Detroit left to come. If it's normal and some Genesee County, which is Flint, and Washington, Ann Arbor, Trump's doing well out state, but a lot of it is in. So she's in the hunt in Michigan. It's tight. Right. But we're looking at that saying, hey, if Detroit's really worth 300,000, again, you know, it's starting to look like she's in the hunt there. And then we hear Ron Johnson, who is considered the second most vulnerable Republican, has won pretty comfortably in Wisconsin. That indicates that the drama may be moving to Wisconsin.
So for the scorecards at home, if the Clinton campaign takes Michigan, the next thing to watch is Wisconsin.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Wisconsin could be what breaks it or
right.
makes it for the Clinton.
It looks like the Republicans may retain the Senate. If Trump wins the presidency, the Democratic Party will have the least amount of power that I can ever remember a political party having, both at the national level and the state level. It's hard to overestimate what this means tonight and how nervous
Wisconsin,
I am.
we haven't carried Wisconsin since '84, so he's turning the map a little upside down in some ways here. If it happens.
If it happens. Let's be clear. I want to be very clear that there's a way that the Democrats can win the presidency. I want to be clear about that. But again, a lot of now the dominoes have to start falling our way.
All right, we're back to you, Brian.
All right, Lawrence O'Donnell, thanks. Steve Kornacki over at the board. Let's talk paths here, Steve.
Yeah, let's take a look at exactly what it would take, what they were just talking about there for Donald Trump. So you see the scoreboard right now with the new updates. So let's take you through a couple scenarios here. We've shown you it's not been called, but Donald Trump is leading in Florida right now. Georgia, it's not been called. But again, if Donald Trump were to get these two states, New Hampshire, this is too close to call right now. It is winnable for Trump. There is this congressional district, this rural congressional district in Maine. It's very winnable for Donald Trump. Let's leave Michigan and Wisconsin alone for a second, and let's go to Arizona, the next most likely target for Trump. Again, if he wins Arizona, look where he... Oh, and by the way, there's this one congressional district in Omaha. Again, if he wins that, then look where he's sitting. These are the most winnable states left for him, and he's sitting at 268, and he would be one state away from the presidency. Now, we're talking about Michigan. You got a lot of Democratic vote to come in Michigan, Trump leading by about 40,000 votes right now. You got Wisconsin. You still have votes to come in from Milwaukee. You still have votes to come in from the county where Madison is. Those are Democratic areas of the state. However, we are also seeing a lot of rural counties that are traditionally blue flip to red in Wisconsin. I can show you that in a minute, but Wisconsin, right now, that's why it's too close to call. And Nevada, that would be the third target. Donald Trump, if the other things I just showed you go his way, he needs to win one of these. He needs to win Nevada, or he needs to win Wisconsin, or he needs to win Michigan. If he does that, he's president-elect.
All right. Let's talk about it. Nicole Wallace?
Listen, I have been hearing for the last hour that Republicans are giddy about the prospect of controlling all three branches of power, which is what a lot of Republicans, even Trump detractors, think is within reach tonight. I've also heard from my Trump-loving parents who said if you're lucky, Trump won't deport you. I'm not so sure. I think Steve Schmidt, Mike Murphy, and I, if we go missing after here, like maybe have the building security. Right. Yeah, I think I'm near the top of it. But you know, we just had Bill McIntyre on across the hall, and all of the polls were wrong. She did not have a 3.5-point lead going into this morning, and that's what the average of polls had her at. This is not a map that reflects a three-point lead. She didn't have that. I don't know that she ever had it. People will I think the Clinton camp is already sort of putting out this Comey spin, and it's half of the story, but the other half is what it did to him. He closed stronger than anyone in recent political history, and our folks that were on the trail with him talked about it. The New York Times wrote an incredible piece about how it was this thunderbolt that just got him on message. He made a closing argument that is being reflected in the exit polls about being an outsider. In a year when you like no one, you pick the known unknown, not the known, no, I don't like her. You pick the, I don't know if I don't like him. And that's what they picked. They picked, you know, I know I don't like her. I don't know how much I don't like him. And the closing argument from the Clinton campaign, this is about what kind of country you live in, is something every parent is going to have to grapple with, because this is the country we live in, where the disgust, I think 10 months ago I called him political chemo, who wipes out all the healthy blood cells, who takes out everything with him, because people think the disease is so acute, they're willing to take the strongest medicine possible. I think that's what we are seeing. The cancer was Washington, and a lot more people than we predicted, than our pollsters predicted, viewed him as the cure.
Why aren't any incumbents losing?
Well, you know, George W. Bush campaigned for, I think, every Republican who won tonight on the board, and his message was anti-protectionism, anti-isolationism, and anti-nativism. So voters are really smart, and I think they've calculated that at the top they want change.
But it can't be that
But how is that
Washington's-
smart if you want if you're
It can't be
voting
that
for
Washington's
two
the
different
problem.
things,
I'm
right?
return all of Congress.
You're voting for two
then
diametrically
why isn't
opposed
she
things.
winning? And listen, it is far more likely at this point that he wins than she wins. It is far more likely at this point that, and I say this not as someone who voted for him, but it is far more likely that he wins, and it is far more likely that tomorrow morning we're talking about a Trump cabinet than a Clinton cabinet.
I'm not disputing that. What I'm disputing is that the diagnosis is that people wanted to get rid of Washington. Because if they wanted to get rid of Washington, they would have thrown out Ron Johnson. They would have
she'd
thrown,
been there 30 years. I think at the top, they viewed her as less appealing than him. I'm looking at the same polls
but
you are.
It's not a diagnosis for the rest of what happened tonight. I think, which I think is a fascinating thing. I don't know what it means that the Republican Party survives intact, and the only thing that changes is a radically different type of person at the top.
I am not saying it's intact. I am not saying it's intact. Paul Ryan and Jim Comey, two Republicans, become like the last dinosaurs tomorrow morning. They become the most endangered species in the country.
Because Trump's going to try to throw Ryan out?
Donald Trump wants to work with the Speaker Ryan. He may say so tonight, and if he wins in a victory speech. Paul Ryan is endangered. He had the most uncomfortable and really excruciating endorsement of Donald Trump. If Trump wins, I think he wants a speaker that's going to go along with his.
But he's going to get in there and be like, vengeance is mine. John McCain, you're dead.
I don't think the party's intact. I'm only half joking about getting deported myself. It's not intact, but it has, at the level of our voters and our base, it has embraced change over stability.
What does the new party call itself?
Like I keep thinking of, Prince, the band formerly known as. I don't know.
It's still the party
formerly known as the Republicans.
Had they thrown out more people running for Congress and running for the Senate, I would think that the Republican Party was going to be radically different. Instead, I think they just swapped out the guy at the top. Everybody else goes back.
He's just not any guy, though.
It's a pretty radical change at the top, though.
Yep.
It is. And so, one of the questions I think we would be asking if this went that way is, where do you draw the line pro-Trump, anti-Clinton, in terms of how people voted and why they voted that way?
We have a poll we take here at NBC Wall Street Journal, which Jack Germond believed in as religion over the years. It's the right direction, wrong direction question. It's not ideological. It can mean we were too far left. It can mean we were too far right. You have to read it the way you read it. But it's been pretty consistently two-thirds we don't like the direction of this country. And so we tried, as a country, we picked Hope, big poster. I was for that all the way, of course, I'll admit it. And we're looking all the time for change. We made changes in 08. We made a change in 10, right? We made more of a change in 14. We're maybe making a change in 16. The president had a tremendous bond with this candidate for president of the Democratic Party. I've never seen a closer bond. She's my candidate. He's my president. Let's get together. We're going to do this. Well, it's not working tonight, so clearly it's certainly not clear yet who's going to win. But I do think there's tremendous response to that wrong direction number, that people keep trying to find the president they want, and they keep hoping. The Bernie crowd, this guy Bernie wasn't going to be president, but it was pushing that button. I want change. Everybody was pushing that button who voted for Bernie. He didn't make it.
And people who like Trump liked Bernie as a second choice.
They want that change. They're banging on the pipes, more hot water, whatever they're saying. They want something. Like the kid says, I want an item. I want a thing.
In Bernieville, a Vermont Republican has just been elected governor.
Well, maybe that's I just think that there's an urge for something we don't have. And if Trump wins, I think it will be the toughest job in history for him to deliver what he promised. If Hillary wins, she has to deal as an establishment figure, the first woman president, with a need to try to bind this country together and keep it workable for 4 years. And that means dealing with who is ever left on the Republican side.
Across our newsroom, Hhjwhite, we've had many discussions with you, Hugh, over this campaign season. We have them all on video. What do you make of what you're witnessing?
Well, I am perhaps the only admitted reluctant Trump voter in the building. And so I'm happy to explain. I think there are millions of people like me, people who are worried about the Supreme Court. I think Obamacare is the untold story here. I think it just clobbered people in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. That's why Ron Johnson won. I had him on my radio show this morning talking about Obamacare. I think the Republicans are holding the Senate because there is a promise of the repeal and replacing of Obamacare. And while I understand Nicole's concerns, I don't share them. I think think that what you will see with Donald Trump is a completely disruptive change force. There will be a drop in the market tomorrow. It will come back, and he will surround himself with Mike Pence's, and they will not throw out Paul Ryan. He will want to accomplish things. He's a builder. He is a very different personality than we've dealt with before. But for all those reluctant Trump voters out there who came home in the last 2 weeks, and I am one of them, we're feeling as though it's a policy election, and it's a rejection of Secretary Clinton's ethics. That's what it comes down to.
Hugh Hjwhite will continue to knock this around here in this room. We're going to fit in a break. We are covering, to call it a fluid situation at the presidential level is an understatement. We'll be right back. We are back. These are the faces in the crowd. That is the Jacob Javits Convention Center on the west side of Manhattan along the Hudson River. We showed the overflow room earlier before the actual crowd had been loaded in. There was a story in the New York tabloids that was knocked down just a few days ago about the fireworks, the victory fireworks celebration that was planned for tonight over the Hudson River until cooler, calmer, and more reasonable heads prevailed within the Clinton campaign, and they stopped the fireworks 2 or 3 days ago.
Stop the plans for the fireworks, at least. Yeah.
So that's the situation we're looking at. Steve Kornacki's at the board talking about Wisconsin. Steve, what have you found?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're talking about Wisconsin, one of these states. If it comes to the scenario where things break Trump's way the way they are in states he's leading, this could be one of those that puts him over the top. He is leading right now by 60,000 votes. Now, where are the votes left? There are votes left in Milwaukee County where Clinton's winning big. There's probably a little bit more than 100,000 votes left here. Again, depends on turnout. Could be a little bit more. Clinton will pick up votes here. She will also pick up votes in Dane County. There were 300,000 votes that were cast here in 2012. You can see they've still got probably another 100,000 votes or so out. Clinton will make up significant ground here. Here's the problem, though. Also out, look at this, La Crosse County. This is just starting to come in. Trump leading here, and Trump's leading all around here. Trump's going to pick up ground here. Here's a shocker. Brown County, where Green Bay is. This was an Obama county. Donald Trump's winning this thing by 20 points, and it's only half in. He's going to pad his margin here. You want the story of Wisconsin? You want the story of the Rust Belt? You want really the story of America in a lot of ways? Check out this map, this red-blue map as we see right now, and look at the sea of red in Wisconsin, a state that last voted for a Republican 32 years ago in 1984. What did this look like just 4 years ago? Look at all that red in the Obama election 4 years ago. Look, all that blue. Donald Trump has taken, and a lot of these are very small counties, Donald Trump has taken them, and he's turned them red tonight. In Wisconsin, could be going Republican for the first time in 32 years.
Wow. I want to just talk about one factor here that we haven't discussed at all over the course of this evening, which is in some of these states. I've been looking specifically at some of the states where Trump is leading, even if we don't have a call in those states, just these very close states, and Wisconsin among them. There are a number of these states in which the third-party balloting, the third-party vote, is a factor in terms of the size of the margin here between Trump and Clinton. Again, you can't always say that every third-party vote came from one major party ticket or another. But in Florida, which we have now called, in New Hampshire, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Iowa, in all of these places, the numbers that you're seeing for the third party more than account for the difference between the two candidates. And so if those states end up getting called with these very tiny margins, you may see that the Gary Johnson vote is what made the difference, that the Gary Johnson and Jill Stein vote is what made a difference. And I'm not just talking about Utah, which is a very interesting three-way race. I'm talking about the state of Florida. I mean, there's, depending on where those votes came from, a lot of Democrats may be looking at Gary Johnson and seeing Ralph Nader there.
Yep. Not a pretty picture for them.
Well, it is what it is. We'll go into this eyes wide open. If you vote for somebody who can't win for president, it means that you don't care who wins for president.
That's what I think. And when you talk to people like that and say, why are you letting the vote go against the interests you normally support? And they act like it's some sort of a Vichy thing, like you're not really taking sides or something. Some kind of, I should use that term, but some kind of neutrality.
Switzerland.
Yeah, Switzerland, a neutrality. And even Switzerland was a pro-German neutrality. I mean, you really do take sides. And what side are you on is a pretty good question. The union guys always ask that. What side are you on? And I think people don't like making decisions because then you're responsible for who wins. And then people don't want that responsibility. Oh, there's some flaws with Hillary. I'm not really sure I like her. All right, make a decision. I think some of the Republicans, however, if this is what happens tonight, went home in the last 2 weeks and said, I care more about a conservative Supreme Court than I care about a guy with moral problems as president. I'll live with Donald Trump.
But the idea that you look at Donald Trump and you think, Manhattan billionaire, thrice married.
No, but he'll give you the Supreme Court you want.
Maybe he will.
Well, they hope he will.
He's also promised to build a wall on the southern border and to ban all Muslims from coming into this country.
Women who have abortions.
Why do we believe some of these things and not some of the others?
Well, because they're hopeful.
Well,
they're hopeful.
Hope is a word for it. Delusion is another.
No, I don't know because we don't know who Trump is. I think a good argument could be made that of the three issues he ran on, illegal immigration, loss of factory jobs through bad trade deals, and wars he opposed, he may not have a commitment to any of those. How do we know? They were brilliant marketing decisions, though. Brilliant marketing, because they tapped into real feelings out there that people really have. And he tapped into them. We'll see.
I was just going to say really quickly on the third-party vote, because if you talk to particularly younger voters who were choosing third-party, it wasn't even not wanting to make a decision. There was sort of a chic to saying, I'm above both of those candidates. And I think we have to own a little bit in the media ourselves this idea that we sort of equalized, not us sitting here at this table, but in generally and broadly the idea that these were two equally flawed, equally unpopular, sort of two sides of the same bad coin candidates. I think in general the portrayal, every story, if you Google stories of Hillary Clinton, the term trustworthiness, honesty and trustworthiness was in the story. It was in every story, right? Whether or not the story itself had to do specifically with that. And I think that resonated with a lot of younger voters in particular who had a sort of a vague feeling that she was just as bad. And so the idea of there was a chic to saying, well, both of those two candidates are so bad that I'm going to take this sort of high road of picking one of the others, even if they didn't know anything about them. I mean, I have my two kids, I have two that are old enough to vote, who had friends that were like, I don't like either one. And they didn't know anything about Jill Stein or Gary Johnson, but there was sort of a chic to saying, I'll choose this third option. But to your point, Rachel, that margin in Florida, you're talking about over 200,000 votes combined for those candidates. So it actually, you are making a decision. It could flip the election.
Oh, yeah.
And on the question of Donald Trump and what it is he believes in, I think one of the things that we know he believes in for certain is revenge. So if you are Paul Ryan or Hillary Clinton or
so smart,
we know he believes in that.
He has a list
deeply. So one thing you can count on is that given all of that power and all of those powerful agencies with which you can seek revenge.
In terms of Paul Ryan and the revenge factor, we've actually heard from Paul Ryan tonight. Paul Ryan was reelected to his own seat in Congress tonight, but we've also heard from him on the broader state of the race. Chris Hayes has that. Chris?
Yeah, Paul Ryan has been reelected, and he has addressed supporters. He, of course, will be returning as of now as the Speaker of the House, although it's going to be a very uncertain future for him should Donald Trump emerge victorious tonight. We do know, as you said, that Donald Trump believes in revenge. It's one of his sort of core beliefs. He's stated it often. You hit me, I hit you back. Here's Paul Ryan talking to his supporters in Janesville with his fingers crossed.
I am so eager to get back to work for you, to get on with fixing our country's problems. We have so much potential in this country, so much potential. And if we can just tap it, that's what's ahead of us. By some accounts, I've just been sitting there watching the polls. By some accounts, this could be a really good night for America. This could be a good night for us. Fingers crossed.
I want to note here that should things break in Republicans' way the rest of the night, they have a very realistic possibility tomorrow of controlling all three, both the House, the Senate, and the White House. And the question would then become, who's in the driver's seat on policy? What does the Trump administration look like? Is it a version of Paul Ryanism, of course, a person who supported free trade deals, including the TPP in the past, Mike Pence, who voted for NAFTA? Is it Trumpism? Is it something in between? Is it something out of left field? Remarkably, we sit here tonight with not a very good idea at all of what that looks like.
Chris Hayes at our news desk tonight. Thank you. I would just say, can we just put up that bug that we had up there just a moment ago, the Dow bug that we had? One of the things that Chris was reporting on earlier, which you've been keeping an eye on over the course of really the end of this campaign, we've been watching the markets react whenever Donald Trump appears to pip up in the polls right now. And tonight, you see the Dow Jones futures. Obviously, the Dow Jones is closed right now. The market is not closed in the is not open in the United States. These are futures, people betting on what's going to happen, or people putting their making their stakes in terms of what's going to happen at market opening. Down nearly 700 points tonight, with Donald Trump having such a better night than a lot of people thought he would.
The Dow futures were not on the minds of the people who have turned vast stretches of our country red this evening. We have a call, the state of Florida. What we are terming the apparent winner, Donald Trump. In the state of Florida, 29 electoral votes. The apparent winner terminology. Here is the electoral math. 216 Trump, 209 Clinton. The race for 270, here's how it plays out visually. So much talk about the paths to 270. Who merely wanted Florida?
Right now,
who needed it? We have another call back-to-back. Utah, Trump. 6 electoral votes. The projected winner in Utah. Here we go. 222, 209. Back down to the ice we go for the depiction in color. Red and blue.
Well, still connects.
And the remaining gray.
In terms of the swing states tonight and how they have gone, we've got Hillary Clinton, just in terms of swing states and battlegrounds tonight, prevailing in Virginia, in Colorado, in New Mexico. We've got Donald Trump prevailing, according to NBC News projections, Donald Trump prevailing in North Carolina, Ohio, and Florida.
I need to interrupt with another one. Trump wins Iowa, the projected winner in Iowa. We've had a flurry of projections here. 6 more electoral votes for Donald Trump this evening. 228, 209.
Again, the number that you're going for here is 270. That's the number of electoral votes that you need in order to win the presidency.
Steve Kornacki has just run over to the map because of Michigan, Steve.
Yeah, well, we've been telling you, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, these 3 states emerging as key. Hillary Clinton playing catch-up in Michigan. Where does it stand right now? It's tightened. Hillary Clinton polling within 17,000 votes of Donald Trump in Michigan. Let me show you where the votes are left here. If she's to make that up, first of all, take a look in Wayne County. This is where Detroit is, not just Detroit. There's also some suburbs. You see, there's a lot of votes still to come in Wayne County. Over 800,000 votes were cast here 4 years ago. You see, you add that up, we're really only at about the halfway point if you're using 2012 as a benchmark. So Hillary Clinton can get votes out of there. There are still, though, votes to come out of Macomb County. Again, this was an Obama county. This is one Trump targeted. And look, he has turned it around. There are still votes coming out of here. He can make up some of the margin there. He's also doing surprisingly well. Again, this was an Obama county. Trump appears to have flipped it. This is something we saw in Wisconsin as well. So there are Trump areas as well. And if you just look at this, like we did in Wisconsin, look at all the red on this map right now in Michigan as the returns come in. Go back to 2012. You saw these blue areas. It's not quite as dramatic as Wisconsin, but you're seeing it. So Hillary Clinton has opportunities, and you see the votes have changed again. She's 25,000 behind. There are opportunities really in Wayne County and a little bit in Ann Arbor for her to make that up. If she can check Michigan off, then she can get, if she were to get Wisconsin and Nevada, that would stop Trump.
Steve Kornacki, right now, what's the total amount of the vote that's in Michigan? We're not yet up to 60% of that vote.
Yeah, and it's tough to, yes, we're at about 60%. And again, the big sort of thing that's lagging right here, it's Wayne, it's Detroit. You've really got about half the vote here in by far the largest county. So this is the biggest thing yet to come in. But then it's a big sort of Democratic county versus a lot of small and medium-sized, what tonight are red counties, where, you know, one by one, he can chip away at that.
Steve Kornacki, thank you. Again, just keeping in mind what's still outstanding in terms of NBC News projections, Georgia, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, all key states where we are waiting on the final word. And there are obvious combinations of those remaining few states that tell us who the next president will be.
I just got word that Pennsylvania looks strong for the Democrats again. Brady's saying out of the Philadelphia machine it's going to be 450 to 460. So that's way up where he needed to get. So I think that state's good for Clinton right now. But if Trump's got to decide what kind of a president he's going to be, we're in a weird situation right now.
Oh, I can confirm we're in a weird situation right now.
Something made me think of the movies a few minutes ago. I forget what it was. I was thinking of the movies. I think of Jeremy Lerner's line in The Candidate. What do we do now?
What do we do now?
What do we do now? And that might be the situation Trump will find
Robert
himself
Redford sitting on the edge of the bed.
Right.
Ben Ginsburg is here. Ben has been a lot of things. He is Mr. Republican, or at least enjoyed that title about a year ago. He was the former general counsel to the RNC and now partnered with Jones Day in Washington. Ben, I just want you to free associate. You've been through this journey. Tomorrow morning, an organization bearing the title Republican Party is going to take an assessment along with the Democrats of what has just happened, which is at this hour is not entirely clear.
Absolutely true. I think what it means for the party is that Donald Trump has overperformed. We didn't think at this hour of the night we'd be talking with Donald Trump having as many electoral votes as he does and as many states still outstanding. So the Republican Party is going to wake up tomorrow feeling good about itself. What appears to be a strong showing in Senate races, keeping the House, will also perhaps put aside some of the guns in the circular firing squad that look to be forming, whether Donald Trump pulls it out or not, or Hillary Clinton's the president.
I guess a question that comes out of the organic conversation we've been having is that a Republican Party in title only. What is this new organization?
Well, one of the things that Donald Trump has done for the party is shown that the three-legged stool of the Reagan administration that Republicans had run on for the last 30 years is no longer exists, that you can win without that. So what's interesting is that the Donald Trump administration, his platform, what he'll stand for and what he'll put in legislatively is still very much an unformed act. So it does at least present the opportunity to create the sort of small government conservative philosophy in solving the problems of the people who have come out to vote for him in ways that most didn't see coming.
Ben, thank you. I know you'll be watching all of this along with us. Steve Schmidt has joined us out here in the studio once again, a veteran of Republican politics and a lot of battles. Your thoughts?
Well, look, it's an extraordinary night. And one thing we already know is that no matter what the outcome is in the presidential race, the party of Reagan no longer exists. And what we saw in this election cycle was really the GOP was an empty vessel, and it was filled up by Trumpism. And so what exists tomorrow is something that's wholly and fundamentally different. And to Ben's point, we really don't know on a policy perspective should Trump become the president-elect of the United States tonight. The policy proposals offered in the campaign were fairly incoherent. We do know, at this hour should become president-elect some of the issues that the country will be dealing with tomorrow. You see the Dow futures down 600 points. You will see panic in NATO allies in the Baltic republics, where he has been permissive with regard regard to Putin's maybe regional expansionist aspirations there. The Turkish president has said that should Trump be elected president, he would deny U.S. ability to launch airstrikes into Iraq against ISIS from the Incirlik base. We know that there would obviously be enormous issues on the southern border with Mexico. The TPP treaty, which hangs in the balance, there's an expectation globally that would be passed, and our Asian relationships will be flat out dead in both a lame duck Congress and a new Congress. So there are enormous issues geopolitically that we'll be dealing with this. This is the seismic event of our political lifetime, just by him getting this close and tapping on the glass. And he may well break it before the night is over.
On that point, Steve, I think one of the things we haven't talked about tonight is Muslim Americans and what the feeling may be in the Muslim American community in this country. The Muslim American community is not a small community in this country. There are about as many Jewish Americans as there are Muslim Americans, and they're a lower profile community. They don't have political power in a way that's often recognized, but they have been targeted in this election by Trump in particular, early and loudly and repeatedly, in a way that has to be making them feel bad tonight, and I think probably in a lot of cases feel worried. Donald Trump never rescinded his pledge that all Muslims should be banned from the United States. And if you're a Muslim American right now, I think that tonight has to feel not just like a seismic political event, but like a seismic event about what America means. And so people, I think, who disagree with Trump about that, who would plan to block and maybe President Trump about that, are going to have to do some work with our Muslim American friends to try to prove that what he says about Muslims in our midst and what it means to be Muslim American isn't the only thing that our country has to say on that subject.
All right.
Yeah, I think they'll feel fear.
Yeah. Steve Kornacki is at the board with some new information on Wisconsin, and we have a potential guest who may join us live. Steve, go ahead.
Well, let's just take a look. We know the importance of this state. There's, votes still coming in. The gap here for Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin right now is about 72,000 votes. But let's just do some math here to show you what she's up against as the vote comes in. What you see is you don't see a lot of blue on this map. So she needs blue counties where there's still vote outstanding where she can make that up. Now, the good news for Clinton is she does have 2 counties where that's the case. One is Milwaukee. The other is Dane. That's where Madison is. Now, here's the problem. If you go by 2012 turnout, if you look at the turnout in each one of these counties in 2012, and basically I'll show you what I mean. Basically, if you take the vote that would be left, if you add the vote that's up right now, the total turnout, and then you have the vote that is left to get you to the 2012 turnout, and you give Clinton 64% of it. So you say she keeps getting the same pace and we got the same turnout as 12. If you did that in Milwaukee and if you did that in Dane, Clinton would basically be just at that 71,000 level. Now, turnout looks like it's a little higher, so she might be able to get past that 71,000 level. Here's the problem. If she does, it's going to be by a small amount. And then you look at what's left on this map, and we can show you. Let me turn this thing off, and I can show you what I mean. If Clinton gets ahead, look what's left. La Crosse just starting to come in. This is a sea of red out here. Look over here, Brown County. This is now most of this is in, but again, I think there's a little bit more here. Trump picks up ground. All of this red in here. When there's still vote coming in, Trump picks up ground, even by small numbers. You just don't have that many blue counties where Clinton's going to get vote. The places where she could, you see, there just aren't that many votes. She needs big numbers out of where Milwaukee is. She needs big numbers out of Dane. And there is a chance, though, there is a chance when you look at this map, you'd have to say there is a good chance that Donald Trump's able to offset that with all of this red.
We're bringing in Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York right now. Mayor, you on right now?
I am. I'm right here.
So tell me, there's Judy Nathan, your wife. I mean, this is the first time we've seen you two together, so you must be more optimistic than you've been in the past.
Well, we're both very good friends of Donald and Melania, personal friends as well as good friends. So we're very happy for them on a personal basis, and we're very happy for the country. I think this was and I hope it works out. We still have a little ways to go. But if it does happen as it looks that it will, this is a real victory for the people. And Chris, I know you're a historian. This is like Andrew Jackson's victory. This is the people beating the establishment. And that's how he posited it right from the beginning. The people are rising up against a government they find to be dysfunctional. And yes, it's a defeat for the Democrats, but this is a defeat for some Republicans, too.
Okay, it's 1824 again. So how does the new president, if it's your guy, Donald Trump, how does he reunite this country? All ethnic groups that have felt abused, and I think rightfully so. Hispanic people, Islamic people, all kinds of people out there feel that they've been excluded from the Trump future. What's he going to do? What would he do about that to heal that?
I do think if you listen to his speeches over the last 2 months, I don't think a speech went by where he didn't talk about his dedication to truly improving conditions for African Americans, for Hispanics, and for poor people, and for returning the ladder of success that you and I had when we were young, which means a good education and a good job rather than dependency. That was a Jack Kemp candidacy there, really, or a Rudy Giuliani candidacy. And I truly believe that a good education and a good job is a lot better than giving somebody welfare.
Would you like to be part of it?
I like what I'm doing right now, Chris. It's too early for me to think about anything like that.
We got to call him. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me.
In the state of Georgia, one of the earliest to close, one of the latest to be called. Donald Trump, the projected victor there, 16 electoral votes. A lot of talk that the Democrats would be able to convert that. As you see our chart, 244, 209 in the electoral votes. And down on the board, it is a continued march of Republican red, sweeping the American South. Chris?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you still on? Okay, we lost him. Well, there you go. That map of red is continuous. It's contiguous. It's crossing the country. And I still think this election's up in the air. I still think Pennsylvania's going to decide this thing. What do you got?
This is a change in status for us. Wisconsin, Arizona, too close to call, too close to call.
They had both been too early before.
They had both been too early. Note the percentage of official vote in and note the difference. This is not yet decided.
And we haven't heard really from the usual voices you hear when you're in a very tough situation from a candidate. We're not hearing their people coming out saying, we still got a good shot. This looks still good for us. We still have a plan. They hadn't had a plan for this time of the evening where they'd have to explain that they could still win.
The Clinton side, you mean?
Yeah, the Clinton side doesn't seem to have a secondary, something behind the front line to say, okay, not what we wanted, but we got a plan to win here. We're not hearing that yet.
What we're down to here with these last calls are New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, and Maine.
Well,
yeah, Steve is.
That's where we're at. That's where we're at. You know, I just think this is one of the most amazing nights in political history. It just is.
Steve, can you show? Are you camera ready? Can you show some of your homework? I see you over there working on combinations.
Yeah, take a look. We had a thing set up here that was supposed to automatically do. I'll do it the old-fashioned way because it's not working here. But take a look at what is still outstanding and what the paths are right now. If you see Trump sitting at 244, okay, Arizona, looking at too close to call there. If Trump wins that, he picks up 11 there. 244 would become 255. Okay. Then you look up here. Now Maine is one of those states that splits their electoral vote by congressional district. Realistically, the best Trump's getting out of Maine, if he wins that rural district, Bangor, Lewiston, Auburn, all that, he can get 1 out of Maine. He'd sit there at 256. If he wins New Hampshire, you get 4 out of New Hampshire. He'd be sitting there at 260. And then again, you take a look at what's left on this map, and you would need, you would need Wisconsin. Wisconsin would put him over. Wisconsin would put him at 270 at that point.
Jeez.
All right. The math is getting easier to do. I will say that. I don't have as many numbers in your head.
Katie Tur is just up the block from us after a 510-day Trump campaign. Tonight finds her in the ballroom of the New York Hilton Hotel. Katie, we were just saying the Clinton communications shop has all but shut down. This is a dark side of the moon period for them. They've shut down on social media, in person, surrogates, you name it. What are you learning from there?
Well, the Trump campaign is feeling really good. As quiet as the Clinton campaign is, the Trump campaign is jubilant. Sources tell us that inside Trump Tower right now, headquarters, the war room, if you want to call it that, is described as, quote, crazy. Donald Trump is no longer in that room. He had been there with his top aides, his family, and also his running mate, Governor Mike Pence, but now he is upstairs spending some time with his family as the prospect of him becoming the president of the United States becomes suddenly a little bit more real than it was even earlier today. I can tell you from having crisscrossed this country with him for now 17 or 18 months, what I've seen in almost every city that we have been to, in even some of the bluest states, are people that come out and say that not only are they frustrated with Washington, and not only do they like the fact that Donald Trump is somebody who will tell it like it is, but they want someone to go in and just change things up. Somebody who will throw a bomb in the water, if you will. Somebody who promises that they are going to fix things. Somebody who promises that they are going to get things done. And Donald Trump has done that on the campaign trail almost unequivocally, making grand promises that, frankly, would be very hard to get enacted in a Congress. We'll see if that still remains if he wins tonight in a decisive way. Of course, that is still up in the air, and whether or not the Republicans maintain control of the Senate. We already know that they're going to maintain control of the House. But what I can tell you is that the Trump campaign is feeling vindicated. They feel like they've been talking about a movement, one that most people have overlooked or discredited, and now they're seeing that movement come to fruition. These underrepresented voters that they were not seeing in the polls, these low propensity voters coming out and voting for Donald Trump.
In big numbers across this country. Katie Tur, thanks. Lawrence O'Donnell is with former RNC head Michael Steele and a certain James Carville, who we've been listening to this evening.
That's right. And the conversation never stops here at this table. And James, Wisconsin is looking shaky for Secretary Clinton.
Shaky? Yes, that shaky is about as optimistic a word as I can see right now. I think this is, if this thing goes where it looks like it, where I hope it doesn't go, people got to understand this election is going to have consequences like you can't believe. I was looking with Steve Schmidt's presentation, and I think Steve was, if anything, optimistic. Donald Trump now has the authority of an election behind him. It's the biggest thing that you can have in a democracy. You can't. This is not an antiseptic event. This is now. He has the validation of the people, and he was not very. He said what he was running on. It was pretty clear what he was offering, and you know, obviously, you can imagine I'm just wrought about the entire thing. I feel terrible for a lot of people, a lot of my friends, but that's what is here tonight is hard to put into perspective. We're going to have one-party rule in this country, and Obamacare is done. Dodd-Frank is done. The diplomatic and financial consequences, I'm looking now, the futures are down 719. They're going to go further. It's hard to imagine what this means, and it is no sense in sugarcoating to people. I think Wisconsin is very problematic. Talking to Chris, and if you just look at what it is, I hate to say it, but I hope, please, God, let me be wrong.
Michael?
Well, look, I have to tell you that Donald Trump set out on a mission. He laid out a vision that connected with a lot of people, a lot of folks around the country. And what was fascinating was it didn't matter the state, as the map showed. Yeah. They used this campaign as a sledgehammer against the established political order in this country, top to bottom. You're right, James. This is a new order here. This is a brand new space for the country and for the American people. Elections have consequences. We all know that. And we're all in this together now. So what is going to be important? If the numbers, if the states bear out the way they seem to be, and he hits with the next 2 or 3 states, hits 270, this This is the moment where Donald Trump is, if he's never done it throughout this campaign, this is the moment when he shows the country he's president. And he makes the kind of, I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there, because no matter how you cut this, this is a huge step forward. Now, everybody who gave the talk about Donald Trump wanting to come together around Hillary Clinton and make it work are now going to have to swallow those words and come to Donald Trump and make it work.
Donald Trump did not run to unify the country.
No.
That was the last thing that he did. The country did not vote to be unified. I mean, I don't mean to be, this was not like a unity and all Americans coming together to be one common people with a vision. This was, there are some people, you know, that are going to do something, you know, this and the other people do that. It's very clear what we voted for. He did not mince words, and I cannot emphasize that enough. He was not a unity candidate. That wasn't what he ran on. He didn't run on a typical Republican agenda.
What is your expectations of governing then?
That we're going to, Obamacare is done. Dodd-Frank is done. Trade agreements are done.
But he said that. So
yeah, I know.
That's what the American people want.
As we hand it back,
not complicated.
As we hand it back to Brian, let me just inject one note here legislatively. Chuck Schumer has just become, or will at the end of this night probably become, the most important player in legislative outcomes in Washington now, because he alone in the Senate, with parliamentary tactics, can tie up or try to tie up anything that this Republican Congress tries to do, from repealing Obamacare to repealing Dodd-Frank and all of those things. So there is still Chuck Schumer and the Democrats' filibuster power in the face of what we're seeing tonight.
That's if they hold.
But we're getting a little bit ahead of the election results, so we're going to go back to Brian for more of that.
Well, very true. I mean, if this goes Trump's way, Chuck Schumer of New York will be the senior elected Democrat.
And it is without having control of one of the two houses, which is obviously what your party would prefer to have.
Right.
If you had to only have, if you had to be one minority party figure in a Washington completely controlled by the other party, what you would want to be is the Senate Minority Leader. You'd want to be Chuck Schumer in terms of being able to use the procedures of the Senate to try to block things as they go. I mean, we don't really know what the composition of the Senate is yet going to be. We still have, we do not have a call in the New Hampshire Senate race. We do not have a call in the Pennsylvania Senate race, or in the Nevada Senate race, or in the Missouri Senate race. We've still got 4 outstanding. Those numbers will become very, very important. But we do know that the House will go to the Republicans, that Paul Ryan will at least start this next Congress as Speaker of the House. We haven't yet seen what revenge Donald Trump, if he is elected president, he will take on Paul Ryan. But Democrats right now, looking ahead to a potential Donald Trump presidency, are trying to figure out what levers of power might exist, full stop.
I'm also thinking of John Roberts. Does he look around and say, how few justices, really, how many do we need to do this? Let's go to Andrea Mitchell over at Clinton headquarters at the Javits Center. Andrea, I imagine that is the biggest shift in mood that you've ever seen in a large ballroom.
You can say that again. It is just palpable. When those states started turning and they began to see these numbers, people just standing shell-shocked. And there's no live entertainment here. They've got the network projections up. They've been piping in speeches like Andrew Cuomo's from outside. Chuck Schumer also, when he declared victory in his own Senate race. So there's no one here to rally this crowd. There's been radio silence except for a few communications that were received without any quotations possible on what they still believe their path to victory would be, to my colleague Kristen Welker and me and our other colleagues here. But other than that, we have heard nothing from the Clinton family. Earlier in the night, they were so optimistic they were giving us color details about what little Charlotte, the older grandchild, was wearing. And at that point, they were talking about a victory speech, very frankly. So this is putting an enormous damper, obviously, on this, and it's a very narrow path now. She has to, draw a royal straight on those remaining states.
Andrea Mitchell, thanks. Nicole Wallace has rejoined us with some reporting from inside what has been going on in Trump Tower.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, you put it to Kellyanne at the beginning of the night about whether he was prepared to speak to both outcomes. I'm told that he just headed back to the residence to work on a victory speech. And
he had the other one ready?
I don't know that he did. I mean, I'll let her speak to that. But he had a traditional transition, run by Chris Christie and some folks with knowledge of how the government works. And he was so superstitious about his own long odds that he's really not paid much attention at all. I think the transition period is 78 days. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Mitt Romney, as you might expect, as a business guy, had a really well-executed transition plan. Donald Trump also has had a team that's been working in vetting potential nominees for many, many months for a transition. So all these things that no one talks about because we accepted the polls. When someone's ahead by 3.5 points, maybe you should be asking more questions. But the work of a transition has been underway, and I imagine we'll start hearing information tomorrow. He'll probably get briefed on that for the first time, I would guess.
Let me ask you this, and include your circle of friends, you and Steve. If it were drawn from the usual folks, you would say, what a strong bench they have.
Right.
But we can't assume anything.
Well, listen, 3 years ago, he was a Democrat, so I wouldn't assume that you can't assume anything. I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows who we'll pick from? And a guy that without 15 minutes in government just I think is on his way to winning tonight. So who knows what he values in an appointee? I have no idea. But I know that the transition was done by people from inside the GOP establishment, and the people were vetted in a very traditional way. So I think when you start hearing names, they won't be the kind of names that have been floated on the campaign side. That information that's been out in the last 48 hours has come from the campaign. There was a separate entity, a transition, with a transition staff that was doing the actual vetting of potential nominees.
Steve Schmidt, someone getting off a transcontinental flight and walking through the airport and pausing to listen to us right now would see that our talking points don't match up with the known knowns of the graphics. No one's been elected here. What's your view as to what's happening here?
Well, look, I think the body language at the Clinton campaign victory party says it all, is that Donald Trump is on the precipice of becoming the president-elect of the United States, of being the commander-in-chief of the world's most powerful military with its most potent nuclear arsenal. And I do think we should spend just a second talking about one of the history-making aspects of tonight, which would be the execution of probably the most successful intelligence operation since the code breaking in the Second World War, where you had a hostile foreign power intervening in an American election, trying to influence its outcome with the WikiLeaks attacks and the hacking of the Democratic Party and in the Clinton emails, and certainly it's had an impact on the election, on her reputation. And maybe an obvious question is, why are the Russians so keen on having a candidate of their preference be elected? But we're just in uncharted territory. Well, Chris, I think every intelligence agency in the country, you listen to Mike Morrell. I don't think there's a lot. You listen to Mike Morrell. I don't think there's a lot of debate about.
No, there's no debate about the way they've interrupted. The question is what their ultimate motive is. Is it to have a candidate they want to win, or they just want to make us look like less a democracy than we've always seemed, to try to disrupt us?
I don't know.
That's an open question.
Well, I mean, let's take Trump at his word. I mean, Trump has said one of the things he wants to do is, if he won, he would like to meet with Vladimir Putin now, as president-elect, even while Barack Obama is still president of the United States. He wants a one-on-one Donald Trump-Vladimir Putin meeting. He wants those meetings to start now, even while we've still got another president filling out the end of his term. So I'm sure that's very attractive to Vladimir Putin right now, to be meeting with one president-elect while you've still got a president.
But that's a Logan Act violation. Yeah. You can't negotiate for our government.
Before we plan an inauguration, let's go get an update from Steve Kornacki on Pennsylvania. Steve?
Yeah, this is a state, I think the last time I I talked about this. Hillary Clinton had a lead. Seems like a long time ago. Just in the last few seconds, Donald Trump has polled within 7,000 votes statewide of Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania. Now, I can show you what is still out in this state. Democrats talked a lot about Philadelphia. Chris Matthews has been talking about, he's been getting some info there. His info's good. The Clinton margin's gone up. The Democrats did get their margin out of Philadelphia. This is sitting at about 450, a little north of 450. That's what they needed. Look in the suburbs, though. This is not what they expected. Look at Bucks County. Donald Trump doing as well as Mitt Romney did. In fact, a little better than Mitt Romney did in this county. Remember, we talked so much about the struggles he was supposed to have. But here's the thing. If you look at where the vote is still to come, there's still a little bit of a scattering in the Philadelphia suburbs. Clinton will still get some bounce from there. There might be a little bit left in Philadelphia. The biggest single source, let's see if this is what changed. No, the biggest single source of outstanding votes in Pennsylvania appears to be Butler County, which is this just north of Pittsburgh. Give you a sense, 4 years ago, nearly 100,000 votes were cast in this county. You can see they are just starting to count. This is a red county, and Donald Trump, I should say, the red counties you're seeing around Pittsburgh here and really all across Pennsylvania tonight, they're a lot redder than they were 4 years ago. So Donald Trump's going to get a lot of vote here. One other thing I can show you in Pennsylvania, we talk so much about Scranton. This Lackawanna County, where Scranton is, this was an absolute blowout 4 years ago. Barack Obama won this thing by 28 points over Donald Trump. 28 points. Tonight, Hillary Clinton's winning it by 3 points. That's the progress Donald Trump has made away from Philadelphia and the suburbs in this state. And that is why, let's see if we've got an update on the vote. Yep, that's why he's within 4,000 votes and closing in Pennsylvania.
Overall, 89% of the vote in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Watching these numbers just click up. We're up over 50% in all the outstanding states. Minnesota's got just under 70% of the vote in. Wisconsin's got 3/4 of the vote in. Michigan's up over 60%. We're getting close. These numbers are getting tighter and tighter in terms of just the percentage of the vote that's in. At Maine right now, where we still don't have a call, 68% of the vote in. Hillary Clinton appears to be ahead in Maine, but we still don't have a result there either.
Well, it shows that the big city came through, but it also shows, I heard another source today that the people out there on the Republican side have a real problem. They hold their nose on Trump, but they do care about the Supreme Court. And he was able to get people to vote for his party line despite him.
I heard that from John Boehner a week ago. I said, what's your message? He's out there, obviously a private citizen now, giving speeches. And he said, my message is exactly as you articulated in the same words. Hold your nose and vote for him for the sake of the Supreme Court. It obviously resonated.
Yeah. Who knows what he's going to do in the Supreme Court?
Exactly.
I maintain that we have no idea what he's going to do about anything.
Exactly.
The fact that he put out a list that he never read, that somebody else gave him to put out as his list of Supreme Court nominees.
How about an evening? What time is it now? At midnight. Where the Democrats' fondest hope is how to figure out how to replace Mitch McConnell with Chuck Schumer. What kind of an opposition leader can the Democratic Party fashion? I mean, it's a pretty depressing thing for the Democratic Party right now to say, how obstructionist can we be, as Lawrence pointed out? What role can we play with the 60-vote goal to prevent them from getting anything done? Isn't that a wholesome notion, already planning? The Republicans may not know what they're going to do as president, but the Democrats are already planning how they can obstruct it.
Well, we don't know if that's what they're planning.
Well, I mean, we're talking about it.
We're talking about it, but honestly,
the 60-vote objective, the 60-vote goal is a way to stop the other side from doing anything.
But we don't have any intel from the Democrats right now in terms of what they're hoping for. But what I do think that there's a different dynamic at work here than there would be in a different year's election, which is that Donald Trump has proposed stuff while running for president that is unprecedented in its radicalism. He has proposed banning people from this country on the basis of their religion. He has proposed He has proposed a nationwide deportation force that would round up more than 10 million people in this country.
That's terrific.
He has proposed building a wall on the southern border. And so if the Democrats are thinking about, well, what are our options? I mean, when you're talking about somebody who's brought forward a policy menu that's completely off the chart in terms of what anybody else has proposed, you do start thinking about what your options are within the realm of the democracy that we've got.
But that's not just Democrats. I mean, listen, the policies you mentioned are appalling. I mean, and I think a lot of Republicans, that was where some of the divide with Paul Ryan came from after the Muslim ban. I mean, the two that you named, the mass deportation force and the banning of Muslims, most Republicans said were not only not in line with Republican values, they were un-American. So I think in terms of obstructing those two policies, there might be a bipartisan effort to say, well,
maybe.
So, I don't know. Hope springs eternal.
Right.
We're in the shank of the night. But those two policies are appalling. And I don't think he won because of those two policies. You and I had this argument 10 months ago. I think he won despite those appalling, probably un-American and unconstitutional
After he proposed the Muslim ban, nationwide opinion polling of Republican voters showed 2/3 of them were in favor of the Muslim ban.
We don't see it in the exit poll. I don't think that animated his vote today. I think it was economic despair.
Here's another unusual aspect of this, too, is that so typically, candidate is elected president, and we say, well, the other party was defeated. And the reality here is if he becomes president-elect within the next couple of hours, two parties were defeated. The establishment of the Republican Party went down in flames with the Democratic Party as well. The party of Ronald Reagan, party of George Bush, 41, George W. Bush, President 43, who we worked for. The party doesn't exist anymore. And I'm not sure what the new Republican Party is and what it looks like and what it stands for and how it works with President Trump. I'm not sure what the opposition coalition looks like from a national security perspective. I know one thing. I know that John McCain feels a deep commitment to America's security alliances around the world and believes profoundly that they're essential to maintaining peace in the world. And so I don't know what the new coalition looks like in terms of advancing a President Trump's agenda or in opposition to it.
That'll make for an interesting dynamic. Steve Kornacki, you're in Wisconsin right now.
Let's take a look. We were looking at a Clinton lead of about, a Trump lead of about 60,000 the last time we checked in. That lead has increased. Trump's lead is now closing in on 100,000 votes in Wisconsin. Again, this is the product largely of these rural counties, just bit by bit coming in. Surprised Trump's strength in Green Bay. The thing here for Trump, also La Crosse County, by the way, still a lot of vote to come in there. Donald Trump with the advantage. Meanwhile, more vote has come in from the two Democratic bastions. This is Dane County, University of Wisconsin-Madison, not all in yet. But again, think of it this way. 4 years ago, 300,000 votes were cast here. We are seeing higher turnout this year, but you can see a big chunk of the vote is now in there. Also, Milwaukee County still vote to come in, so Clinton can still make up ground, but Trump can too, and Trump is now sitting on an advantage in Wisconsin that is approaching 100,000 votes. One other thing I want to flag nationally right now, I don't believe I have this graphic I can pull up, but keep this in mind. Yes, we elect the president by the Electoral College. We're looking at the paths there right now. We are also tracking the popular vote. Right now, the popular vote in this race is sitting at about 50.8 million for Donald Trump, 49.7 for Hillary Clinton. We are there it is. It's up on the screen right there. Oh, there you go. Donald Trump over 51 million. One thing to keep in mind, the single biggest source of votes, raw popular votes that's left on the map is California. It is only started to report right now. Hillary Clinton north of 60% of the vote there. She's going to get an enormous popular vote advantage. It is just a seed to plant right now as we talk about Donald Trump moving along this path to 270. There is simultaneously a path for Hillary Clinton to win the popular vote, even if she does not win 270 electoral votes tonight.
Wow. You also put the Gary Johnson photo up there in terms of that popular vote. We've been trying to keep just an informal eye. This is not something that's being tracked from our election desk, but just keeping an informal eye on Gary Johnson's numbers and where third-party candidates conceivably might have made a difference. It appears that the third-party votes more than account for the margin of victory in Trump states, including Florida, in outstanding states where we don't yet have a call, including New Hampshire, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Again, we can't tell you where that third-party vote might otherwise have gone, but it looks like, particularly in Florida, which is a state that we've called, that third-party margin more than accounts for the difference between these two candidates in that state.
Can I offer a calming note on the issue of immigration, which is the most hottest issue? We're talking about banning people because of their religion, which is totally unconstitutional. In the end, if there's going to be a new immigration policy in this country, it's going to have a fulcrum of people that really are responsible people. It's going to be Rubio, and it's going to be Lindsey Graham. It's going to be Chuck Schumer. it's going to be, and of course, your guy, John McCain, it is going to be a people in the relative center on this question who are relatively pro-immigration. And they are good people about this one issue. I think they are. Yeah. So whoever, left or right, has to cut their deal to win in the center and to get the 60 votes, they're going to have to deal with these people. So the good thing, if you're concerned about immigration, you want a solution to it, you want a true comprehensive solution, which includes some kind of restraint on illegal hiring, opportunities for people to become certainly green card people and maybe citizens. There is a route, and it only goes through those guys in the middle. So I know
you think Trump is going to sign immigration reform?
I'm just saying if there's going to be any change in the immigration law, it's going to have to go through these guys.
I can't imagine. I mean,
They're not going to build a wall.
Donald Trump campaigned on building a wall. Donald Trump campaigned on deporting more than 10 million people. He campaigned on Mexican immigrants being rapists. This is not a guy who's going to
It's not a tyranny.
He's not going to sign. He has to sign the legislation.
He will deal where he has to deal to win.
This debate has ended up among the same through two presidents. This debate has ended up in the hands of the same group of bipartisan senators.
They're the ones who'll decide.
The late Ted Kennedy was in the middle of it.
He was definitely in the middle.
And John McCain and George W. Bush, and they had an opportunity, a window to do something done. It was ultimately sabotaged by Republicans. But you're right. I mean, lawmaking is very different than running the kind of campaign he ran, and people are really scared. So I think that's a really important.
Most of the campaigning is BS. Let's be honest about it. It's saying stuff to get votes. When he gets to the presidency, if he's the winner, I don't know who the winner is tonight, either person has to succeed as president. And the only way you succeed as president is to pass law that you can sign.
Right. And that's it. That has what you described as a 63% approval rating among the public.
You guys, what lesson did the Republican Party just teach itself about the politics of immigration reform? I mean, in the primary, was there any worse vulnerability for any Republican running for office than having been soft on immigration reform, right? And then the guy that they picked was not a guy who's just a hardliner on immigration reform. He's the build the wall guy. They're not looking at this thinking, God, we really got to deal with this immigration issue. They went harder and harder and harder line on this, and the people who went the hardest line got the biggest rewards. And that is not a recipe for constructive policymaking on that issue. It's not a recipe for any sort of policy making on anything that's going to involve any of the centrists that you're talking about.
But for sure, we're not going to have a terrific wall with a beautiful door for the good ones to come back any more than the dinosaurs are coming back to life. Right? It's not happening. It's not happening, right? I mean, it's fantastical imaginary stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we just made a decision here in this country. We're in the process of making a decision here that a lot of people thought was totally impossible.
Well, I'll take the
guy at his word.
I'm taking the Faulknerian position, which we will not only endure, we will prevail. And I just Faulknerian position, which we will not only endure, we will prevail. And I just accept that view. That's how I survive. We will make it. We will make it even with Trump if it comes to that.
I take the guy at his word. He said he's going to do what he says he's going to do.
Guantanamo is still there.
Hi, let's go out to Nevada, where Harry Reid is vacating his Senate seat, and where the Democrats had the chance to have the first Latina woman in the U.S. Senate, and they appear to have done so. It was tight all the way. Joe Heck, his fortunes kind of rose and fell, and tonight they fell just enough for the Democrats to hold a net hold of this seat. We're going to take a break. We'll have more of our live coverage when we come back. We are back. We want to show you this is the Trump ballroom at the New York Hilton Hotel on 6th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, a stone's throw from our building, and across town on the Hudson River on Manhattan's west side, a huge cavernous space inside the Javits Convention Center. So named for the late great former New York Republican senator. There in the middle of the United States is the lectern where we were supposed to hear, where we will eventually, one would assume, hear from Hillary Clinton. The crowd came in very jazzed up, high energy. We saw the overflow room. And then as the first projections came in, the mood started to sour and then darken. And there have been sporadic pictures of people in the crowd in tears, embracing each other, that sort of thing. Steve Kornacki is at the board with new numbers out of the state of Pennsylvania.
Told you a few minutes ago Donald Trump was closing in on the lead in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump now has the lead in Pennsylvania. He's moved ahead by 1,000 votes. The reason we told you the biggest source of outstanding votes left on the map in Pennsylvania was right here in Butler County, a Republican bastion that Donald Trump tonight has made more Republican. You can see it's now reported. Donald Trump with a very lopsided victory there. That is enough to put him in the lead. A couple of other things, though, going on this map right now. More vote coming in still from Philadelphia. Chris Matthews is right. They really got the job done there. The Democratic machine now 453,000. Still maybe some more to come out of there. There are still some votes here in the Philadelphia suburbs. Two pieces of bad news for Democrats. Number one, that doesn't necessarily mean they're votes for Hillary Clinton. You can see here, well, actually, this looks like it's just changed. We have it red. Trump and Clinton have been going back and forth here. Clinton now edging ahead of Trump in Bucks County, but they're basically tied there again. The thought here for Democrats was they'd be comfortably ahead in the suburbs. Also this, you see one piece of gray here. There's one county in the state of Pennsylvania yet to report, Lebanon County. This is a Republican county. You're going to get at least 60,000 votes out of here. Mitt Romney won this by 2-1 in 2012. So Donald Trump right now, the biggest single source of votes left on this map belongs to Donald Trump, but there still are scattered votes coming in. You can see Trump's lead sits at about 2,400 right now over Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania.
Obviously, Steve Kornacki, you are not making projections from the wall, but it sounds like you can see where Pennsylvania is going to end from where you stand.
Now, there's also some question here. Do we have absentee ballots if it gets really close here? I mean, you look at a margin like this. If you have absentee ballots, if you have something that's really close, you could say an apparent winner or something. At this point, though, Trump has taken the lead. That's what I'll say for right now.
All right, Steve Kornacki. Again, the states that we are watching that are still outstanding at this point: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, New Hampshire, Maine. That's all that's left on the board. Neither of these candidates has made it to 270. Trump is significantly closer, and he's within a state or two.
This is the time of night we often call in Michael Beschloss, presidential historian, author, and a frequent contributor to us. Michael, we've had wave elections, we've had trend elections, we've had status quo elections. What, in your personal scope of history, are you comparing the possibility of tonight to?
Sure looks like a wave election where there is a trend through all these states. And one thing, Brian, you know, we've talked about all sorts of reasons why the Donald Trump surge happened tonight. One of them is, I've been thinking about it all evening. You know, 2 years ago, exactly this month, President Obama made a little noticed comment. He was talking about 2016 and who might succeed him. And he said, you know, it may be impossible for me to pass along this job to a Democratic successor. He said, the people may want that new car smell. That was the term he used. You know, 1836, Jackson was able to pass the White House on to his vice president, Martin Van Buren. The next time that happened, you have to go all the way up to 1988 when Ronald Reagan was able to do that for George H.W. Bush. You know, even, for instance, in 1960, when Dwight Eisenhower, a very popular president, tried to leave the presidency to Richard Nixon, couldn't do it. Bill Clinton, whose popularity had rebounded by 2000, tried to do it for Al Gore, couldn't do it to such an extent that Gore was able to escape the fate of the recount and a Supreme Court ruling. The Democrats lost the White House. So I think as we think about all the reasons why this happened tonight, it's not reason number one, it's not reason number two, but on that list is the fact that structurally it was very hard for President Obama and the Democrats to retain the White House for another term and hand it along to his preferred successor.
Heretofore, to ask a structural question, they have been members of the kind of party apparatus. This is different because this is someone, as we've established over months, who kind of burned down the house of the party establishment, plowed through all of his competition and every contest during the primaries.
And wears that as a badge of honor, as we've said many times. This will be, if Donald Trump is elected tonight, this will be the first president that we have ever had with zero military experience, zero public service experience, and also probably the smallest relationship with the leaders of his party of any president that I can think of.
Yeah, it's hard to think of a sitting office holder who would be Jeff Sessions in the Senate, Chris Christie, the governor for another year of the state of New Jersey. It's difficult when you look at allies, people he could hit the ground working with.
And not only that, if you're thinking of things that we've never seen before, the talk both from Mr. Trump and the people around him that he may undermine the sitting Republican Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, and try to look for someone else and throw Ryan out.
Michael, on that point, I was just about to ask you about that. Are there historical allegories to that sort of thing? I mean, there's been so much interpersonal drama even within parties over the years. I have to believe something like that has happened before, but I don't know about it. Has that happened before?
I can't think of a case where a new president has come in and said, you know, we've got a speaker of my own party, even though I may not like him, I'm going to work with him. That's usually what you hear. I can't think of a case where a new president said, concurrent with my inauguration, I'm going to commit a coup d'etat against the Speaker of the House.
Oh, Michael Beschloss, I take such comfort in thinking it's my own ignorance when I think something is unprecedented. I always think you're going to tell me, oh, no, it happened in the 1880s and everything was fine.
Sorry, I can't find any reassurance on that one, Rachel.
Oh, great. NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss, thank you. A comfort to have you here, if not a comfort in the comments. I want to also bring back into our conversation now the good and great Chris Hayes, who's been at the news desk for us tonight. Chris, what do you got?
So we've been following some of the first kind of reverberations of what appears to possibly be, obviously it's not been called at this point, but the market's beginning to price in the possibility of a Donald Trump presidency. The Dow is down 800. Now, here's an interesting data point. NASDAQ and the S&P 500 have halted trading on the futures market until the opening of equities markets tomorrow because they hit the 5% loss break, which essentially is an automatic emergency break that happens when crashes happen. So that trading's been halted. That gives you a sense of how global financial markets are most likely going to respond if it is the case that Donald Trump pulls out a victory tonight and is declared the president of the United States tomorrow when those markets open. Also, something else has crashed. The Canadian immigration website. This is not like some joke. It actually is crashed from apparently people's interest there. So we're just now, again, beginning to see how some of this is going to reverberate out across the world. There will be a lot more of that if this night continues in its current trajectory.
Again, just to be clear on that market data, Chris, it's the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. They have halted trading in futures because they've triggered the
that's right. So
the crash warning. Basically.
That's right. So all those markets obviously trade during the day, during business hours. There's a futures market for off business hours. The futures market, if things are moving in the market while the market's closed, people will try to essentially get ahead of that for tomorrow. Those future markets hit their essentially bottom. Their automatic brake switch. They've now opened back up again for trading, so we'll continue to monitor those.
Wow. While the Dow futures are down up over 750. Chris Hayes, thank you. Invaluable.
While a lot has happened, we're also watching a lot yet to happen. We're going to fit a break in here. Our live coverage continues right after this. We are back, and we wanted to just take stock of the states that have yet to be called. Pennsylvania and its 20 electoral votes still too close to call. Michigan is also on that list, as is Arizona, still too close to call. Upper Midwest includes Wisconsin. We just had a projection. This is a call interrupting our list. Hillary Clinton is the projected winner in Nevada with its 6 electoral votes. Here is where that leaves us. 244, 215. Trump over Clinton. And here's what the map looks like with the pickup of Nevada for the Clinton campaign. You see the coastal argument people have been making. It's pretty hard to deny that we are a coastal blue country. Steve Kornacki has been looking at the state of Pennsylvania. He's been looking at the path to 270. You name it, he's got it.
Let's take a look in Pennsylvania right now in terms of, oh, that's the wrong thing. Let's try to get Pennsylvania up here. I'm sorry, this thing is about to collapse, I think. Let's see if we can get in Pennsylvania.
Come on, Pennsylvania.
Come on.
Come on.
See?
Will it?
Click on. There it is.
So.
We got everything but the results. Let's see if those come up. Oh, for God's sake. Guys, can you come back to me in a minute?
Yeah, we will.
That's unbelievable.
In terms of outstanding states right now, we've got 6 states outstanding, and it's an interesting grouping. We've got Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. We've got New Hampshire and Maine in the Northeast, and then we've got Arizona in the Southwest. So 6 states outstanding altogether, with Nevada now off the map and in the Democratic side. What was that for, Chris?
No, I'm just amazed at the ethnic breakout of the country, the way it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what's going on. It's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not pretty at all.
Yeah, I'm just watching it when you get a tremendous black vote out of the city of Philly, and then you have this counterpunch.
Yes, you do. I mean, you had a very robust turnout among Latinos, among African Americans, who came out, who delivered the votes, but there was a much bigger turnout from those rural areas, from those small towns, from not just the Rust Belt, actually. I mean, it's beyond the Rust Belt. So I don't know. There's obviously a racial divide. There's a urban area versus exurb or small town or rural area divide. There are lots of ways to split this up, and we're gonna spend a lot of time figuring it out.
It's not the usual result in American history. It's center left and a center right party sort of splitting somewhere in the middle. This is a different kind of division.
No, this is, and it's troubling. In some ways, it's the America of yesterday versus the America of tomorrow. I mean, the America of yesterday appears to be winning tonight. The America of tomorrow, the America of our demographic future, the America that's more cosmopolitan, more connected with the globalized economy, that's doing better from it, seems on the verge of losing.
At this point, though, we don't have the final result. We don't have the final demographic splits, and we don't know how the country is going to evolve in the future. Like, I don't think that we can say that all the people who gave Donald Trump these majorities tonight are going to be dead in 10 years, right? It's not a waning demographic. I don't think that the country is shifting away from the groups that are giving him these majorities. If they were, he wouldn't be winning in such big majorities. Right now he's put together a list of wins that's impressive by any Republican standard. He hasn't taken any deep blue Democratic states. He's just taken every state that was within reach.
Yeah, but what I'm arguing is that the sorting out that's been going on in American life is really advancing, where you have big cities which are overwhelmingly liberal, progressive, if you will, black and white and brown liberals, and then you go right outside and you find another part of the country which is just the opposite. This is a divided country.
Right.
And sorting itself out.
I would just like to point out how badly everyone in Washington, D.C. has been disconnected from all of this. Because I got to tell you, it's not just Democrats shocked, surprised, stunned, probably saddened by this. It's also all of the Republicans who worked for those 16 other people who ran for president, who I've been, kind of talking to all, and they were waiting for Donald Trump to lose so that they could move on to the next thing. And I have to say, I just got off the phone with Senator Lindsey Graham, who is one of those people who obviously ran against Donald Trump and who called some of his comments un-American. He didn't vote for him tonight. And now he's saying, okay, well, if Donald Trump is the winner, he's going to be my president. I'm going to have to try to find consensus. He says he will work with Donald Trump to try to repeal Obamacare, do some of these other Republican priorities. He says that he will not, and the quote is, when it comes to being a friend to Putin, count me out. So some early indications from Graham that he wants to be a little bit of a thorn in the side. He also said, for example, that deporting 11 million people who are already here in an undocumented status isn't something that could pass the Senate. That, of course, is a policy that Trump has put forward. forward. But I think you're starting to see people in Washington grapple with this idea of Donald Trump being in charge that just seemed completely like it was from another planet, even 4 hours ago.
Well, it is. I mean, to the people in Washington, it is from another planet, right? They've never seen anything like Donald Trump, and it will be an amazing thing to watch as he comes to Washington, if indeed he does come to Washington. We don't know yet that he will, but if he does, that's going to be an incredible thing. I do think, though, that we shouldn't avert our eyes from the fact that, you know, this big vote for Trump, this is not a rainbow coalition out there voting for Trump. I mean, it's not. It's just not. And you look at where these votes are coming from, and you look at who lives in this area. These are overwhelmingly white areas of the country. And he did not expand his appeal to encompass people of color.
Well, and you know, I spent 4 months on the road with Bernie Sanders, and that should have also been another earlier indicator to the Clinton campaign of just how, you know, wrong that they may have had some of these things. And those crowds, often overwhelmingly white as well, overwhelmingly often. I came away from that feeling almost as though, and ideologically very different, obviously, but Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump in many ways had more in common with each other, and Hillary Clinton and Paul Ryan in many ways have more in common with each other than those respective party labels.
Doris Kearns-Goodwin is the latest guest to join us. Wow. She's been listening to the coverage, keeping one eye on her television.
Well, I guess
Hey, Doris?
I'm not sure I'm listening
Oh,
to
boy.
the right
All right. It's a necessary evil for all of us.
Let me correct something in this moment, let me correct something that I said wrong the other day.
Yes.
Or said just a few moments ago. I said that there were 6 states outstanding. I forgot Minnesota. To my many friends in Minnesota, I'm sorry. Minnesota also still outstanding at this point and leading and adding to the number of those upper Midwest states in that cluster, that one cluster of the country where we don't yet have an answer. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all outstanding, as well as New Hampshire and Maine in the Northeast and Arizona in the Southwest. Sorry, 7 states outstanding.
Steve has wrestled his technology to the ground.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. It's going to probably turn on me again here in the next few minutes, but let's see if I can squeeze this in. Big development in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump's lead here just jumped up in the last minute. He now leads Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania. Look at this, by 26,000 votes. Remember, we said this has been the white whale for Republicans since 1988. Every Republican candidate says they can flip it. None of them have led this late into the night in Pennsylvania. Now, the question in terms of can Trump hold on to that again, we're saying still a little bit of some scattering of precincts in Philadelphia County and a couple of these suburbs. So there could be more Clinton vote coming out of here. You also still have precincts left here. This is where Harrisburg is. This is where Hershey is. Still have votes there. But that is countered from Donald Trump's standpoint by this one. Lebanon County has produced 60,000 votes 4 years ago. This was a 2-to-1 Romney County. We don't have a single vote in from here yet. So Donald Trump stands to pick up ground there as well. His lead, 26,000 votes in Pennsylvania.
Wow, 0 vote in from that one county. Do we have any? We don't have any intel as to why that.
Well, there's a lot of good movies just coming out.
You know, that's true. It's been a nice day. Nice day for a late walk.
Well, I suppose we're going to get a huge parcel of votes out of Lebanon County, PA at some point here.
Yeah. At this point, what we're looking for also is we don't have a lot of reporting on the sources of the delays from these states in terms of why we don't have vote that we don't have. Nobody is more than less than 50% out at this point. Arizona, 65% of the vote is in. In Maine, 76% of the vote is in. That's still considered too close to call. Hillary Clinton appears to be leading in Maine. So it's 4 electoral votes. Arizona, 11 electoral votes. New Hampshire, 4 electoral votes. And then the bigger ones, the big prizes, the double-digit EVs are Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, with Pennsylvania being the biggest one of those. Steve just giving us very good prospects there in terms of what's likely to happen with that last Pennsylvania vote.
And how interesting. You look at the map, with the exception of Arizona, longitudinally, it's longitudinally.
Got it.
I cheated myself on a syllable that first time. You could make an argument that it's all up there in the same area. Let's take a break, see if we can get any finer reporting on either headquarters. The map has not changed since our call of Nevada for Hillary Clinton. There is Trump headquarters, 6th Avenue, New York City, the New York Hilton Hotel. Across town, kind of a different picture, different energy at the Javits Center at Clinton headquarters. We're back with more right after this. We are back. There is Clinton headquarters inside the cavernous Jacob Javits Center. Much had been made of the fact that the ceiling is glass, made of glass panels, and certainly everyone had theorized, everyone had guessed that would be a central part of what they expected to be a victory speech tonight. As we mentioned, there was a plan that leaked for Victory Night fireworks over the Hudson River on Manhattan's west side. Those were canceled before they occurred. Kristen Welker is there for us. Kristen, what have you been able to gather there?
Brian, the mood is somber here inside the Javits Center. A number of supporters have left in tears. I've been walking around. People have stunned expressions on their faces. One person described it as grief setting in. Now, of course, this race is not over yet, but these supporters are just shocked by what they are seeing. One of Secretary Clinton's supporters and volunteers, Annabelle Evora, joining me right now. She is Cuban. She was born in Puerto Rico. She lived in New York, recently moved, but you just came back so that you could vote and volunteer for Secretary Clinton. Your reaction right now as you await these returns?
I came here today to cast my vote and to celebrate and to make history and to break the ceiling. All I want to do right now is just go underground. That's all I want to do. I'm sad, I'm disappointed, and I know it's not over yet, but it really feels like it's almost over.
There were so many issues that you were voting for, and that's why you voted for Secretary Clinton. What are your concerns if Donald Trump does, in fact, win tonight? What's your top concern?
One of the biggest concerns is that I'm a two-time breast cancer survivor, and I know what it's like not to have access to a doctor or to suffer from pain. And considering what's going to go on with the deductibles and the rise in the deductibles, I'm afraid that people are actually going to be without access to health care, and that the numbers are going to rise and it's going to get worse in this country.
All right, Annabelle Evora, thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us. This crowd continues to watch these returns, but again, Brian, it is quiet here tonight, shocked, stunned disbelief as they watch these returns come in. This was not the celebration they were anticipating. They thought they were here to make history, and it is not turning out that way, Brian.
Kristen Welker at the Javits Center in New York. Soon, no doubt, we will get reporting as to what's been going on. Clinton headquarters in Brooklyn, the kind of traveling Clinton headquarters in Manhattan, where this was obviously supposed to be a celebration with former president and extended family. Steve Kornacki is at the board. Steve, do you have any new math?
We do. Pennsylvania, we've been monitoring this. Donald Trump's lead has grown. Why has it grown? We said one county was outstanding. That county, let's get it here. That county has now come in, Lebanon County. You see Donald Trump adding 20,000 votes to his lead. We really are only looking at a scattering of precincts, maybe some absentees left somewhere around the state right now. But Donald Trump sitting there now at a 35,000 vote lead in Pennsylvania. If we zoom out, that bottom line question here, if Hillary Clinton is trying to get to 270 electoral votes at this hour, how could she do it? She would need a couple of things here. First of all, if she somehow got a win in Pennsylvania, that would be, she would get 20 electoral votes. If she could get Michigan, she trails in Michigan right now, that'd be 16, 36 to 215. You're sitting at 251. If she could then pick up Minnesota, if she could get 10 there, she'd be sitting at 261. Then the best thing for her would be Wisconsin. The problem, she's trailing in Wisconsin. We've been showing you all night. That hasn't changed. She continues to trail. But if she were to pick up Wisconsin, that's 271. That kind of looks like the most viable path, maybe the only viable path here. And I'm not even sure how viable it is because, again, we just showed you she's 35,000 votes behind in Pennsylvania. She's behind in all these states right now. You look in Michigan right now. Look at this. She's running 42,000 votes behind Donald Trump. Now, there still is vote to come out of Wayne County here. There's also vote coming out of these Republican areas. She's still behind in Wisconsin. This has been stubborn. She's 90,000 votes behind out there. She'd have to find a way to string all three of those states together. It's pretty much her path right now because Arizona, I can tell you, is not looking good from the Clinton standpoint.
Steve Kornacki at the board.
So, Steve, in terms of those states that we've got out, obviously, Steve, we've got Alaska coming at the top of this next hour. That is the state that has yet to close, the only state where polls are still open in the country. At this point, the Trump campaign is just waiting basically for the numbers to fall in place. But we're not, in terms of anything outstanding right now, there's not really a potential for a surprise here at this point, is there?
A lot of Democrats, I certainly online I see are talking about Arizona. You look at 11 electoral votes. Here's the reality in Arizona. 2 counties are sort of the story of the state, one where Phoenix is, one where Tucson is. And what you see here is it's not what Democrats need. They've tightened the margin from 2012. You see Trump is leading by 3 points, but I can show you Maricopa County here. Bottom line, the margin shrunk. Romney won this thing by a bigger spread, but Trump is still winning it. This is by far the biggest county in the state. So you see Donald Trump, even by winning with a narrow margin, it's almost 40,000 votes, his lead there. And you see, what's the Clinton margin here in the second biggest county? This is where Tucson is. It's just over 40,000 votes. This is an improvement for Democrats than what they saw in this state 4 years ago. It's why this was a fringe target for them. But right now, it's not enough. When Maricopa and Tucson are just sort of canceling each other out, not going to be enough. And then you see a lot of these areas around the rest of the state are Trump areas. So this one is not looking good for Clinton. If she can't pull a rabbit out of her hat here in Arizona, I can also tell you we have not called it. There's this congressional district, this second congressional district up here in Maine, a rural one. Donald Trump is out to a pretty sizable lead in that district. Again, stressing we haven't called it. There is also, you wouldn't know it from looking at this map, there's one congressional district here in Omaha. Again, Nebraska, like Maine, gives it out by congressional district. That's been close. The Trump lead, though, in that district currently sits at 5,000 votes. So if there was some scenario here where Clinton could pick off that district, sweep Maine, get New Hampshire, the problem is she's running into a hurdle there in Omaha. She's running into a hurdle there in rural Maine as well. So again, it really seems like for Hillary Clinton, if there's any kind of a path here, it's some sort of Rust Belt miracle. Down in PA, down in Michigan, down in Wisconsin, somehow with very few votes left, got to win all 3 of them.
Steve Kornacki, thank you. Incredible. The number of numbers that Steve is able to keep in his head while he goes through those things is stunning. I have to say, I keep flashing back to my conversation a week ago, I guess it was, with Bill Weld, with the former Massachusetts Republican governor who's running as the vice presidential nominee of the Libertarian Party. And he came on my show and he gave an impassioned criticism, just a litany of criticism against Donald Trump. And then he said he was there to vouch for Hillary Clinton. And he said he would not say that he was dropping out of the race. He would not say that people should not vote for the Libertarian ticket, but that if they had people had a choice between Trump and Clinton, he could not have been more emphatic in terms of his preference for Clinton. But it matters who you vote for, not just how you feel. And in all of these states where we are seeing the Johnson number be significantly larger than the margin between these 2 candidates. What they were asking for was an anti-Trump vote, but they weren't willing to say and cast it for Clinton. That's what they needed to say. And to the extent that the anti-Trump vote was a Gary Johnson vote, that may have made Trump president.
It matters, yes. Had there been a pro-Clinton fervor, the likes of which we've seen for Trump tonight, the story we're covering now would be different. Doris Kearns Goodwin joins us from Boston, Mass., author and present presidential historian. Doris, what are we witnessing?
Well, I suspect that the intensity of the feeling for Mr. Trump outweighed our normal predictions that a ground game mattered, that somehow this entire race we have underestimated the feelings of the people who felt that the political system had let them down over this period of time. But I think the worrisome thing for America is it's so close, this election, that whoever is going to be the leader, whether it be Trump or Hillary pulls it out, is going to have a really hard time leading in a polarized. The last thing we needed as a polarized nation was to have a polarized election where there may be recounts, where people are going to wonder whether it went the right way. Will people wonder if the third party undid it? We need some direction. We need somebody to take us forward in a certain way. And what worries me most is that we worry about both these people as leaders. People don't trust either one of them. And we're at a state in our country right now where we need somebody to just make us believe in the public system again. And this election is unlikely to do that. Even if people are happy about Trump, he's going to have a really hard time. If Hillary should pull it out, she's going to have a really hard time. And that shouldn't make anybody happy. The one thing that's good is that people have voted. And, that they have come out in ways that we might not have thought they would. And I don't know whether they're going to feel that sense that their vote mattered. They should. Every individual vote is showing that it's mattering right now. It's incredible how close this is, how divided our country is.
Doris, you and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago in a different context about historical parallels for what we are looking at this year and for the kind of choice that the country had to make. We are still absorbing what's going on tonight, and we obviously still do not have a call in the presidential race and in a number of states. Anything is still possible, but it's looking like Donald Trump is likely to be the winner at the end of tonight. I wonder if now that we are on that precipice, if you feel like there is anything in history that can give us a guide to understanding a character like Donald Trump as a president of the United States, if there's any parallels you see to any historical figures in all your scholarship.
I'm not sure there's a parallel to an historical figure, but I do think there's a parallel to an historical time for sure. When you look at the feelings that people had in the Industrial Revolution at the turn of the 20th century, they felt the country was changing in ways that they were frightened about. People were moving from farms to cities. There were big monopolies taking over small monopolies. There were lots of immigrations coming in from abroad, and the pace of life was speeding up. And there was populism then. There were demagogues then. As it turned out, the Republicans carried it through, and Teddy Roosevelt was able to channel a lot of that anxiety into positive action so that the country moved forward. But I think now you've got that feeling that the country is changing beyond the ways that a lot of people feel. You've got immigrants coming in. There's a sense that cities have overtaken rural areas, and that cultural divide and that sense of inequality that we're feeling is the same that we had at the turn of the 20th century. So that feeling, it's almost against modernity. It's against change. And obviously, Mr. Trump has captured that. Again, whether he wins or not, he's come really close to having captured that. And the question is, what do you do with that? Do you channel it in a positive direction? You can't go backward. This is our country. It's becoming more diverse. It's a good thing that it's becoming more diverse. And how are you going to make people feel that sense of fellow feeling once again, rather than one class versus another? The most important thing Teddy Roosevelt once said, a democracy depends on people feeling a sense that they're all in it together. And that's what America's always been so strong about, a diverse nation. And if we're feeling that we've cut each other off now and we're looking backward and forward, it's a scary time in that sense. So my hope is that somehow leaders stand up to it, and we need leadership now more than ever.
Doris, you write beautifully about the Roosevelts and about the Kennedys. So let's talk about both of them, their political party, the Democrats. Back when Bobby was killed, Daniel Patrick Moynihan wrote a letter to Ted Kennedy, who survived, the surviving brother, and said, Daniel Patrick Moynihan wrote a letter to Ted Kennedy, who survived, the surviving brother, and said, you can't, we've turned away from the white working class. We've left them. They're our people. And, I've watched it many times, the pictures of the Bobby Kennedy train going through New Jersey, and I've watched the white, dirty faces of the white working class guys saluting the train as it went by, with his kid in dirty face saluting. That white working class that probably, I think of them as the guys rooting for the Vikings and the Green Bay. They were tough, big guys. They used to be Democrats. Parents certainly were. How the Democrats get them back, because if they don't get them back, they're out there. They voted for Trump. They're angry because they feel like they've been discarded by the Democratic Party. Do you agree with that? I think they were discarded. I don't think helping minorities should have necessarily meant exclude those people and discard them, but they feel discarded, and they voted for Trump.
Well, the interesting thing is, you're right about Bobby Kennedy. He was able to win the minority vote and that white working class vote and go through Indiana and be able to bring those two together. But I'm not sure it's so much that the Democratic Party has discarded them. Certainly not in policy terms have they discarded them. But I think we'll see what's happening. We'll see whether they ever come back to the Democratic Party. That's the challenge, that's for sure.
The best in the business, our friend Doris Kearns-Goodwin joining us from Boston. Doris, thank you so very much. We're now arrived at the 1 a.m. mark here on the East Coast, and that means the polls have closed in the state of Alaska. We have this to say about Alaska, and that is that it is too early to call between Clinton and Trump. Let us, however, look again at the electoral vote totals. Here, our bar graph on the side of the building now stands, as we've been chronicling all night, 244 Trump, 215 Clinton. In the balance is the red and blue, and this national map that we've been staring at all evening, going back and forth, starting in the east and going to the west with the time zones. Still outstanding, the states in gray, which we will now display. The states that are too close to call. Pennsylvania, too close to call, separated by 46,000 and change. Michigan, the difference of about 60,000 votes, too close to call. Arizona, out in the desert southwest, around 60,000 vote difference. Wisconsin, the dairy belt, 84,225 with 87% in. Minnesota, with just about 80% of the vote in. And finally, New Hampshire, too close to call, 82%. Look at the difference.
You think your vote doesn't matter?
You think your vote doesn't matter?
96 votes between the two of them.
Yeah, I said finally. I almost forgot the great state of Maine, which has been a pitched battle all night with 81% of the vote in. 17,000 votes separate 4 split electoral votes from Maine. And that's where we have it, 1 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, and we will have no more poll closings. This means that polls are closed throughout the country.
Yeah.
This is it.
We've checked.
Yeah, exactly. We keep going west, but turns out that's where we are.
You see the map there of those 7 states? 5, the big ones, are leading with Trump's leading. The 2 little ones, Maine and New Hampshire, she's leading in. It doesn't look good for Hillary Clinton right now.
No, what Steve was saying, it would have to be a Rust Belt miracle at this point to pull it off. It is hard to imagine. But we will wait here and be here until we know. Steve Schmidt, what are you thinking at this hour?
Well, I agree with Chris. I think it's looking very, very dim for Secretary Clinton at this hour. I think that it's almost impossible to see how you pull that inside straight, come back in all of those states.
Yeah.
It's not like she needs one. She has to overcome big deficits in all of those states. So, I think the hour is drawing close, where Donald J. Trump will be the president-elect of the United States.
Can I ask a question? Because this is somewhat whimsical. Besides Donald Trump, and maybe Kellyanne Conway, and maybe Rudy Giuliani, who's going to be able to say, I told you so? This is going to be the shortest list. When did he make the call?
Joe Scarborough and Miko have seen the Trump.
When did he make the call?
They've seen the Trump thing from the beginning.
He made the call? When did he make the call?
They have seen the Trump phenomenon from the beginning.
Good loyalty there.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, no one. I mean, I couldn't have been more wrong about this. I said, she was going to be at 323 to 340 electoral votes. Yeah. I've thought it's been over for weeks. Called it right in the primary, but early on. But what you're seeing here is just such a backlash in the country against the establishment of the country, a business establishment, a political establishment, a media establishment, across the board. And it's the collapse of trust in institutions that fueled the Brexit vote. And it fueled this vote. Steve Bannon was right, when he talked about the similarities between Brexit, about a rising populism, and this phenomenon is playing out across all of the Western democracies. And in the next significant global election, is another one where they say in France that Marine Le Pen can't win. She's at 40% ceiling. We'll see. Yeah. But this phenomenon isn't going away anytime soon.
I think part of it may well be that Secretary Clinton, the fact that she wouldn't be president didn't scare people into voting for her. That there wasn't a sense where maybe with Bernie they would have said, we got to get Bernie president. We're passionate about it. With Hillary, they said, well, if we liked her, I might try something out here because I'm not really worried about not having her as president. You know what I mean? There wasn't a big stake in her.
I think Peggy Noonan, wrote the most
she always does.
Piece of the cycle when she wrote about the protected class and the unprotected.
You mean the people that main goal in life is to get their kid into Sidwell Friends? That's their main goal.
And she wrote about what you're describing, this feeling of people being totally disconnected, and it's happening in Europe and it's happening here. And you talk about who can say that they, you know, Peggy got a lot of this right. I mean, Peggy Noonan was on to this divide. And whether you predicted the outcome correctly or not, there are people that sort of were on to this.
Do you think she voted for Trump?
What? I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know.
But, you know, Steve, when you were talking about Marine Le Pen, obviously Marine Le Pen is from Front National in France. It's seen as basically a pseudo-fascist movement on the far right in France. And her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, was seen as almost on the criminal edge of politics in France. And in terms of hate speech, inciting violence against immigrants, denying the Holocaust, all sorts of things like that. Marine Le Pen is a sort of shinier version of him, of her father.
Really cleaned up.
Yeah. Do you think it's fair to put Trumpism as his iteration of republicanism along the same number line as the sort of British far-right nationalist xenophobic parties like UKIP that was so in favor of Brexit, like the British Union of Fascists, like Marine Le Pen?
100%. I mean, Lafarge was at the convention. Lafarge has been here campaigning for.
He went to a battleground state. He dropped him into
Trump.
a rally.
Yeah.
Look,
in Mississippi, he dropped him.
All of our lives. I talked about this the other night. You know, politics has been divided by a vertical line down the 50-yard line. We debate between the 45-yard lines, right-left. Right. We have overheated debates about, you know, the difference between justice and injustice is a 39.6% tax bracket or a 35% tax bracket. But politics now, the line is a lateral line. The people above the line are people who've benefited from the technological revolution, have benefited from globalization, and then there's people below the line who've been left behind. Right. The seismic event of this last generation, really fundamentally what this race was about to some degree, is the hangover from the financial crisis. 13 million people lost their homes. 12 million people lost their jobs. The bankers got $1 trillion in bailouts, and no one went to jail. The ideological line is permeable. Right? You can move back and forth between the Donald Trump camp and the Bernie Sanders camp. And what's increasingly going to define politics is that over-under line. And you're seeing that, you know, really play out in this election cycle with long-term implications for both political parties and for both coalitions.
And for the idea of political normalcy, for how far apart those yard lines are that we play between.
Absolutely.
I mean, the reason he was able to be seen as somebody who would shake up the status quo is because he would say stuff that was seen as politically outrageous all the time because it was way outside those lines. I mean, proposing to ban Muslims from the United States is a really important part of why Donald Trump was elected, not based on whether or not you think he's going to do it, but because that put him as outside the norm, as somebody who was that un-PC.
Maybe the smartest thing that anyone said in this campaign was Selena Zito, you know, the Pittsburgh Tribune columnist, and you know, she said that elites take Trump literally but not seriously. And regular people take him seriously, but not literally. Yep. And just profoundly true.
You know, in Hollywood, they call it below the line. Mm-hmm. So if you're a name brand and you have a contract and you have a good agent, you're above the line. You're a big shot. The below the line people. So what did Hollywood do? They portrayed below the line people as Archie Bunker, and they made fun of him. Turned out Archie Bunker was a popular figure, but the idea was to make fun of him. And so a lot of Americans said, "You've been making fun of us a long time. I think we're going to vote against you." And I think that's part of this. We'll see. There's going to be a lot of analysis, but I hope it's better polling than we've had so far. Because nobody predicted this thing.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'd like to get some pollsters in here and sort of tar and feather them for a while. It'd be kind of fun. Get them in here.
There's going to be tarring and feathering.
Let's talk about the prize in this. After all, is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Correspondent Ron Allen is there, where some people have gathered in what looks to be Lafayette Park across the street. Ron?
Yeah, Brian, we're out here right in front of the White House over there, and you can even see where the fencing is put up as they're building the inaugural stage, the reviewing stand. But there's a huge crowd that's been gathering out here for the past few hours. This was built as an anti-Trump rally, but there are people on both sides of this who are for and against Trump. I think the guys up there in the tree who you might see are people who are supporting Trump, and there are others who are here supporting Hillary Clinton, and they're watching this as we are, and stunned, frankly. Here's a couple of folks I met earlier, college students from Georgetown. Now, you are You voted for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
How do you feel about what's happening tonight, and why do you think it's happening?
We're certainly disappointed about the results. I mean, we're still hopeful for something better to come, but we're not really sure how it's going to turn out. Definitely worried about the possibility of Trump being elected.
Have you given up hope? Do you still think there's a chance?
To me, what's the most concerning is how over the last 2 weeks it's been the very predominant sentiment of, oh, Hillary's going to win. All the polls were Hillary's going to win. So there was this like flow of information that was very inaccurate. And it's sort of shown how, with exaggerated voter turnout, a lot of people have come forward who were sort of not saying they were voting for Trump, who were like, oh, you know.
But you think it was that? You don't think it was this whole idea that people just don't trust Hillary Clinton, and that there's that?
I don't think so, because, you know, if you look at even from today, 5 hours ago, the New York Times poll had Hillary Clinton had an 84% chance of winning. And then over the course of 4 hours, that was totally, you know, turned on its head just by people who, you know, due to the stigma attached to voting for Trump, maybe hadn't said they were voting for Trump and then came out.
Well, there are a lot of pollsters who are wrong. It's very wrong, apparently, as well. But again, it's not over yet. What about you? What do you think went wrong for Secretary Clinton?
I think a lot of the blame is going to go to the DNC for not giving Bernie a chance, I think. And I think a lot of people who voted for Hillary thinking that she would take Trump in the election earlier are regretting their decision.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Again, Brian, a huge crowd out here gathering. It's been building through the night. It's very peaceful. People on both sides of this, a vigil, you might call it, as we sit and wait to see what happens, how this all plays out. Back to you, Brian, from the White House.
Really interesting. Really interesting responses. The young man who talked about the New York Times index, which so many, especially elites on the coast, have been following, did flip, exactly. Flipped right over.
Around 9:20 p.m.
Yep, I'm looking at this Politico headline that said, "How did everyone get it so wrong?" Which will be a conversation and a question that'll take care of a lot of people's nervous energy. Won't change the result, but it'll be fun and
you know, seeing the White House behind that as the backdrop to those interviews that Ron was just doing. I mean, the Obama family. I don't know if they're all home tonight, but if you're Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, the kids. You're thinking about, you know, your 8 years coming to an end, and you've got your lame duck period ahead of you, and you're thinking about these results tonight, and you're thinking about what you thought you never would have to think about in terms of the future of the Democratic Party, in terms of the legacy of having been the first African-American president and the impact that had on this country and the way the country responded to it. It's got to be a really profound, I mean, more than anybody, I sort of want to hear from President Obama right now. I don't know when that will be proper. I don't know what we've never had in the modern era, we've never had a popular two-term outgoing president campaign with all his heart for his would-be successor, let alone have that would-be successor then lose. I sort of want to hear from him more than I want to hear from anybody right now, because I don't know what happens next for Democratic politics.
Or Joe Biden, who, you know, has to be wondering what might have been. I mean, he speaks to, he is sort of the one. We've talked so much, and we spent so much time covering for a tremendous bench of surrogates.
So
Michelle Obama, President Obama. I mean,
Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden.
She just had this extraordinary, but nobody on her bench spoke to the mood of the country or her deficit with voters like Joe Biden. And Mike Barnicle was out with Joe Biden on Sunday and wrote an extraordinary piece in the Daily Beast about Joe Biden going home to Scranton and just his day on the trail and his relationship with his agents. And he sort of speaks street cop. He speaks working class voter. He speaks to all of the folks who have put all of these states that Steve's been showing us tonight over the line for Trump. And so I think I think the Obamas are probably having those conversations, but I bet the Bidens are having them too.
Yeah. But you know, he knows it. If you talk to Joe Biden without quoting him out of context or off the record, he gets it. And he's surrounded by people that don't get it. And he'll talk to you as a guy who gets it about what they did wrong this time.
Steve Kornacki, did they carry Scranton after all?
Like a one can.
Let's go in Pennsylvania.
No,
the answer is no, but the margin is 3 for the Democrats here. This was almost 30 points 4 years ago. We can tell you pretty much, you're looking at all the results from Pennsylvania. There are still some scatterings on here, but look at this margin for Donald Trump now. This thing has crept up. It is now north of 50,000 votes with what is left here. There's always the possibility of some absentees we've got to figure out. It is tough to see. It is very tough to see a 50,000 vote deficit being made up by anyone everyone with what's left on here. We said pretty much right now, Hillary Clinton, to get to 270, for all intents and purposes, she's got to find a way to win Pennsylvania. I just showed you what's going on there. She's got to find a way to win Michigan. Check this out. Donald Trump's lead here right now, sitting just over 70,000. The good news here for Democrats, there is a real shot for Hillary Clinton when you look. A lot of votes still in Wayne County, a lot of votes still to come out of here where the University of Michigan is. She could still net a significant share of the vote there. There's still some in Macomb, too, a big suburban county, blue-collar county that Donald Trump is winning tonight. So Clinton does have a shot at Michigan. But again, it's not just Michigan she needs. This, though, look at the news for Democrats here in Wisconsin. Again, 1984, last time a Republican carried this state. Donald Trump's margin here is sitting at 85,000 votes. There are... Yep. I was hearing something in my ear there. I thought that was an urgent call. Quickly, I could just finish Milwaukee and Madison. The two that are left, it does not look like they are going to produce. The two big ones left for Democrats, doesn't look like they'll produce that kind of a plurality.
There's a problem with your board, and they say we can't touch it till we fix the bug. So step away. That's what they wanted me to tell you. That's a problem with the board. Step away from the board. All right.
Steve is like, I'm happy to step away from the board.
Okay.
I'm worried that Steve's going to shoot the board at some point in the course of this evening.
We're going to have a board meeting, I think. Poor board. Poor Steve. We're going to take a break because that's what people do in this situation. 1:16 a.m. A lot still to cover. A very, very moving situation. A movable target here. Let's put it that way. There is your political nation, superimposed over the rink here outside our building. A vast area of red in the middle, stretching just about out to both coasts.
8 states still grayed out. That's what we're watching.
The race to 270 is what we're calling it. Donald Trump is at 244. He needs 26 more projected electoral votes. It is a much harder climb, not just the math, but the physics of it for Hillary Clinton. 215 won. 55 more needed. You have to look long and hard to see anyone who predicted this kind of outcome at this hour for tonight. 1:21 a.m. The states in gray have not been projected, but you see the colors of our nation there on the map. 8 states not called, as we've been saying, as our coverage has continued on through the night. Lawrence O'Donnell is with his insider guests in his studio. Lawrence.
Brian, we're here with Maria Tracy Kumar and Michael Steele, and we've been discussing this issue of the polls. And as the pollsters are going to get savaged, but all of the polls had this within the margin of error. Hillary Clinton's national lead was within a margin of error. The Florida polls, all of them were within the 3 points.
Yeah, they essentially got them right. They essentially figured out what the landscape would look like, but there were still some elements of this race that sort of popped up, particularly in some of these states where you're looking and you're going, look at the overperformance of the white vote in certain parts of the state. And talking to people and calling around, essentially what's happened is the Reagan Democrats have come back to Trump.
Right. Well, and I think
that's made the difference here.
Well, and I think it's going to be interesting because everybody kept saying that Republican women were going to pull for Hillary, and they clearly did not. Part of me wonders, what was the Comey effect? Because she had them, and all of a sudden Comey came out. So I think that will always linger in people's minds. But right now, I'm getting emails from folks. Everybody's really worried about the community, the Muslim American community, the Latino community. And if Trump becomes the president, he's going to have to figure out how to...
People who have felt threatened by this candidacy are feeling... What are they feeling tonight?
Los Angeles County, has had an increase of 24% in hate crimes since the candidacy was announced. And this is a bastion of liberalism in California. In my hometown, where I went to high school, last week, an elementary school that was Spanish dominant got spray painted with "Build the Wall Higher." Moms that had basically to tell their elementary school, their kids of 5 years old, of what happened to their school. So if Trump wins, he's going to have a conversation that turns down the temperature, that makes people feel inclusive, and he has to act presidential. And that's what Muslim Americans and Latinos and Asians are looking for right now.